Evening, everybody. We'll be getting started shortly, just roughly about 2 more minutes now. Hello everybody. It is now 10 o'clock on a Friday. You know what time it is, people. It's time for Beyond the Doll. So, before we get started, let me switch screens here so that we can all see each other. Give me 1 second. I kind of hit something. Hold on. There we go. Hello everybody, I hope everyone is having a good evening so far. Let me turn down this music. Okay, there we go. Hello everybody, how's everybody doing this Friday evening? Today we got a very special episode as we have a guest appearance for Beyond the Doll. So today is episode 6 of Beyond the Doll. We will be covering 3D printing and dolls. So for those of you that, obviously are in the hobby, you love dolls, you probably have heard or seen things regarding 3D printing in, making things like Batgirl's cowl for one, or, books or swords or anything like that. Like, I know people do firearms and things. They print all different kinds of stuff like stands. I've seen people do like binder clips, etc. And it's been pretty... how should I say, pretty good for the hobby. Instead of having to wait all the time for a company to release a certain item, a lot of people are now making their own items. So it's something I've been wanting to get into for a long time, and I have a guest that's going to talk about, things that they did to get into the hobby, what they were looking forward to, the difficulties, the pros, the cons. We're going to go through all of it today. So, as always, I think I kind of skipped it in the beginning. I am your host, Shizusan, and today, because I have her on loan, is Batgirl. She's going to grace us today with her presence, because I have to give her back. So she's here right now, just for a short while, to say hello to everybody. So, let's see. Let me just go ahead and move her off to the side, and we are going to introduce our guest. So, I've known this individual for a couple of years now. We actually met at an anime convention, and we've been good friends ever since. So he's gonna come on and talk to you guys about, himself and his experiences with 3D printing. So without further ado, where is my next screen here? We're gonna introduce my guest. There we go. Hello.
Hey,
so this is my guest, Keith. He goes by the handle on Twitter and Instagram as @botaku with the underscore, right? I believe that's the underscore.
Yeah, somebody else had the Biotaku.
So like I said, me and Keith here, we've We met each other, I believe it was Anime NYC 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was the first year that they had it.
It was it was the very first year for Anime NYC, and I think it was one of those years that brought a lot of doll people together because Danny Chu from Smart Doll was there. So a lot of people were flocking over, at least from the East Coast, to go and meet him because he's been out on the West Coast a few times for Anime Expo.
Yeah, a lot of times.
So, I mean, that was his first year coming to the East Coast, and I remember there was a lot of doll people showing up just to see him and his booth and his beautiful dolls. And I remember that's when I met you for the first time because I was hanging out at the booth like everybody else was doing, and it was basically like a huge meet and greet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had a couple people, coming in and out. Some people stayed like the whole day, sometimes the whole day, all 3 days. So it was
me.
So it was a good time to get together and meet people, which was pretty awesome. And I believe we met each other pretty much every single year afterwards, except for like when the pandemic hit, and they weren't doing
2020
it.
Or
yeah, I think it was like 2018 and 2019.
Right.
We were both there for all of those, and obviously every time we always met up, talked, stuff like that. I had an opportunity to talk with more doll fans and even Danny himself. So the reason why I brought you on today, Keith, is because I know that you have been doing a lot of dabbling into 3D printing. And since I'm curious about 3D printing, and I know a lot of other people in the hobby are also curious about 3D printing, we're going to be talking about that as the main topic today. So before we actually get into the nitty gritty, I just want to say hello to everybody in chat. I haven't acknowledged you guys as of yet. I was too busy doing introductions and setting everything up, but let's see who's here. Tigrain, welcome. White Rose, welcome to the stream. Venatic Free, welcome. Tempest Strife, how you doing? Dang, do I have any sake? I do have a 2B in the kimono. Oh, man. And then sake music's gone. Yeah, Tigrain, I don't usually play the music as we're like going through the actual thing. Tempest says Barbara is still sleeping over. Hey, yeah, Barbara's gonna actually be sleeping over for quite a bit because her owner is actually traveling to different places right now. So even if I mailed it back, she would just be sitting on the porch. So I'm waiting till she gets back from her travels, and then I'm gonna mail her back. So I'm gonna have Barbara sleeping over for quite a bit. The Smart Doll Volks Super Combo was dangerous. Yeah, that was 2018, I believe. 2018 was Volks and Smart Doll.
Yeah, it was both of them.
Yeah, they were both there that year. That was a crazy year because then you had double the doll attendance because you had all the Dolphy Dream people showing up, and then you had all the Smart Doll people showing up. So it was pretty crazy. So with that out of the way, 3D printing. So essentially, like I said in the intro, is basically you're able to make things on your own with an actual printer, which they call the 3D printer, and with a program. I'm assuming it's a program that you use to like design like a CAD program or something like that to make the shapes or the images.
There's different types of programs you can use.
Right, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But just generally, you have like a printer, you have a program, and then I believe there's some kind of like ink or filament to like make the things out of the printer that you need as well, right?
Yeah, there's a filament or the most common one's filament or a resin.
Okay, so then there's that, and then basically just your idea, I guess, at that point, whatever it is that your heart desires that you want to make for your dolls.
And capabilities and lots of other things involved.
Yeah. And capabilities, yeah. I'm sure there's a sharp learning curve, I'm assuming.
It depends. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to make. You can make simple things, or if you want to go and complicated, it takes some time.
It takes some time. Okay, so let me show you guys a couple of things. I just want to show you guys a few things that Keith here has been working on, stuff to get you guys a little bit more familiar with what exactly it is that we're talking about that's going to be happening. So let's see, we're going to move over here. All right, so we have our little transition screen here. And so here's our first image. So Keith, if you can explain to everybody exactly what we're looking at here so they have an idea.
So these, they ended up getting dubbed just hand holders. I couldn't really figure out any other name. Like I'm not as elaborate at naming my things as Danny Chu is, uh, but so simplistic just went as to simplicity. But
Okay.
so yeah, there I found myself just wanting something easier to locate the variety of doll hands that I had for my smart dolls, and instead of like digging through a little container or something. And I happened to stumble across something else I had. I used to race RC cars, and
Mm-hmm.
the little tiny gears that they have, you have like a little tree that you could mount them to, so you could
Mm-hmm.
change the different gears for the motor. And I looked at it and I was like, huh, it might be a good idea for the hands. So I
Mm-hmm.
went designing and came up with that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, went through a few different uh, iterations until I came up with something with that design. But that's essentially what that is. It was something that I wanted to be able to. I quickly identify the hands and kind of easily carry it around,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to keeping them just in a container and digging through trying to find the proper hand I was looking for.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I'm sure the viewers that are watching this either live or watching it at a later date probably understand exactly what you're talking about. Like I myself, like whenever I travel with my dolls, like I still keep the hands in the original package that Danny sends them out in. You know those
Hmm.
clear plastic baggies? Like I always keep them in there and I just drag that wherever I go and like I just pull them in and out of that. But this is actually really cool, that this thing that you designed here, because you can actually have them together, like the pairs together, instead of having to dig through a bag or like dig through a box, like looking for pairs of hands that match. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's kind of nice seeing it here on the hand holders where like they kind of you can match them up in pairs like right next to each other, which is cool.
yeah.
And I noticed too that you had another picture here which also represents like another hand holders thing, but the thing I noticed that was different was these are Dolphy Dream hands also. Is that
Yeah,
right?
so I started off with Smart Doll. Those were my first dolls, but I do have a few Dolphy Dreams, and I figured I'd not leave them left out. So I decided to challenge myself and see if I could actually create that. And what you see there, those two actually are 3D printed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the ones that you had before, I actually weren't 3D printed. They were
Oh, you mean
cast out of
like
resin.
these ones? Oh, so these
Yes.
ones are resin. Okay.
Yeah, they're actually they're not 3D printed. They were I made a 3D printed mold out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then Cat made the silicone mold, and then those were cast in actual resin. So
Oh, okay. Okay. So it was a little bit of a different process for these.
right,
And then
but it started off as the same thing,
for these ones, it was actually just regular 3D printed, right?
just regular 3D printing.
And now, did you run into like a difference or an issue designing these when it came to a difference between Smart Doll and Dolphy Dreams? Because from the picture, it looks like the Dolphy Dreams have a little bit bigger peg.
Yeah, so the Smart Doll hand peg is much smaller than the Dolphy Dream ones. So um, I I decided to challenge myself and just to see if I could actually recreate the Dolphy Dream hand peg. Because I mean, instead of trying to engineer and figure out the proper, like to have some that both of them work the same, to have a Smart
Mm-hmm.
Doll and Dolphy Dream, like, and it may or may not work. I decided to just go ahead and have two separate ones and do a Dolphy Dream and a Smart Doll,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and do it. And I actually make the hand peg for this Dolphy Dream almost exact
Mm-hmm.
as it is on the actual doll.
Now, did you have any issues? I'm assuming not, but just in case, were there any issues like if you put your Dolphy Dreams or Smart Doll hands in their holders, right, and you're traveling, let's say, they're in your bag and it's like a really hot day, do they have any kind of issues like maybe they get stuck to the peg? Like, kind of like how with our dolls, if we ever change hands, we kind of have to use a hand dryer to warm up the vinyl so we can pull it off the peg. Is that like a similar issue that you get with the hand holders that you've noticed?
So far, I haven't noticed that. No, like the since they're two different materials, like the
Mm-hmm.
resin and the vinyl, like they don't really, it hasn't really
Oh,
stuck together
okay.
for me. And you generally like you said, on a warm day,
Mm-hmm.
that would make it easier for it to come off, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming the resin doesn't expand, but I haven't experienced that.
Okay, and then same thing
Uh,
for like a cold day, maybe. Like if it was cold, I don't know if that
maybe
would change anything.
Maybe for like if you have your older smart dolls, or even like the Dolphy Dreams, because the
Mm-hmm.
Dolphy Dream hands tend to be a lot more stiffer than the smart doll ones that I've come across.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if you had an older smart doll that had those really hard hands, the default ones or
Oh
the
yeah,
early
yeah.
yeah ones, those you might run into an issue with that. Yeah. But
Now that you mentioned it, I did notice that too. Like the older hands were a lot harder and stiffer,
oh
and then
yeah,
the newer hands they're like a lot more squishy.
yeah. Like I think Smart Doll's gone through like two or three, maybe four different like compound changes,
Mm-hmm.
like to make them softer.
Yeah,
But the
Danny
original one,
Chu's always evolving his company,
yeah,
changing things, which I know,
yeah,
as you know, because you follow his posts just as much as I do. And he's always like changing things and evolving things to a certain degree. So yeah. Oh, Tempest Strife actually has a question for you, Keith. She's asking,
oh,
the clear resin means UV cure resin printing, I think she's asking.
sorry, yes. So when we talk about when I refer to resin 3D printing, yeah, it would be UV resin.
Okay.
Not it doesn't actually have to be clear; it can be also opaque. But
Mm-hmm.
but anytime I refer to resin, for me at least, it is at least when I refer to 3D printing resin, that is
Mm-hmm.
UV cured resin.
Okay. And then let's go for another picture here. So, just as another example, you have a slew of hands that we could see here. And
Yeah.
I thought this picture was really interesting because not only did you have the hand holders holding the hands, but you actually had holders holding the hand holders, which I thought was really cool. I mean, the way you have it set up there, like it just makes sense. Like if you had, like a shelf where you were storing things, or even like a
Mhm.
dresser drawer that you were storing your hands in, and you can actually put them out like that, and then just pick out the sleeve of hand pack that you wanted to use for the day or for your trip. I actually thought that was really cool that you can make it a holder for the holders, and then all these different colors as well. What was the was there any difficulty in that, or difference of expense in all those different colors, I'm assuming?
For the hand holders, the sinks, I was playing around a lot. I wanted to see what color combinations I could get and how, like, in what mixing and such would create. The solid colors weren't exactly that difficult. If I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to recreate it, yeah, those were that was a little difficult because I really was just experimenting. I wasn't really writing like anything down too much of like how much of this pigment did I use or how much of this powder did I use.
So in a
Uh,
way, you inadvertently created your own wabi sabi styled hand
yeah.
holders.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Some of the hand holders aren't exactly perfect in those. Some of them have issues, so they were just
Mm-hmm.
yeah, wabi sabi in their own way. Even the stand that the hand holders are in
Mm-hmm.
didn't turn out as well as I would have liked when because that was also cast in resin where I first 3D printed it
Mm-hmm.
and then I made a silicone mold out of it, and the mold didn't turn out too well as
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked. But I decided to go ahead and try and see how it came out. But and it has its own defects in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the most difficult ones I had, like in the first image that you showed, the multicolored one,
Oh,
those were hard.
let me go back to that. This one here, right?
Yes.
That was hard to
Uh,
do.
those were hard to do to try and get keep the colors from mixing in too much, and
Mm-hmm.
then trying to actually the whole process of casting those because I'm still learning on
Mm-hmm.
how to make a mold for casting and resin, and that whole process was difficult. So trying to get those colors from mixing in and getting them blended in like that was difficult. Those were difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, since you mentioned it, I want to pick your brain about that. Is that you mentioned making molds, for doing the resin stuff. So since you've dipped your hand a little bit into making molds, can you kind of identify with what it is that Danny says when he's creating a new doll or making new shell pieces and he has to create a mold essentially, and that he says that in his own posts and his tweets that he goes through like a process of making all different kinds of molds until he gets the right one that kind of works. Can you give me your thoughts on how since your process of going through the molds, like how difficult it is to just get it right?
It could be difficult depending on how you're making your mold as well. So his electroplating process, I don't have to deal with. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not trying to make copper molds
Mm-hmm.
for slush casting. But so when he mentions slush casting and I understand what he's talking about, now, especially after going through that, where you're like trying to spin a mold and get the material or the resin or the vinyl to actually stick to the outsides and make that shape,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that the walls are even.
Mm-hmm.
That's I I haven't done slush casting too much, but that can be a challenge to try and make sure that your wall thickness of those parts are equal and end up being the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Making a silicone mold, like I think he's been doing for some of his things. If you 3D print a mold, or at least 3D print a part, it depends on how you're printing it, if you're using filament or FDM
Mm-hmm.
or doing resin or SLA. The process, the post processing, like cleaning it up. So before you actually make the mold, those are two different things. Like if you're using FDM, because the way that the filament printer goes, it will do a line by line, and those create layer lines, exposed layer lines, and so you have to kind of smooth those out, whether you're sanding it or putting like something over top of it to smooth it out, and
Mm-hmm.
still sanding it to make it smooth
Mm-hmm.
and not exactly perfect because we're talking about with Danny, especially wabi sabi, but so you don't lose your detail and lose some of your other things. Same thing with resin. Sometimes you end up with those lines of how I printed. One of the issues for me that I ran into with the resin is some resins I haven't been able to nail down exactly what's inside the resin. Some people have gone with maybe like sulfur. Some silicones, when you're trying to make the mold into silicone, the 3D printed resin can cause the silicone to not fully cure.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you pull that part out to get your mold, you end up with all this goopy mess because the resin caused the silicone not to cure, and that can truly like
Oh.
destroy your mold, or
Mm-hmm.
you've just wasted material, product, money, and time. And have to either, if you're lucky, you can clean up that part, or otherwise maybe have to be able to make a new part, print a new one, and then start again. There are materials to help prevent that, to try it, like it's called cure inhibition is the term
Mm-hmm.
for it, where it doesn't cure all the way. There are things that you can put on a print to try and prevent that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
So it's like a lot of trial and error essentially
Yeah,
until you get
yeah.
it right. Now once you get it right though, can you successfully be consistent in making them after that? Like once you get the initial mold or print right, then the subsequent ones that you make afterwards, do they become easier?
They
Or
can
or do you run
if
into like a problem every time kind of thing?
it's a learning process. It's not once you've got if you have a good mold, if you finally get a good mold, there's still a process of actually learning the mold, learning how it works, like learning, making sure you don't get any air bubbles trapped in it,
Mm-hmm.
making sure you actually are getting the right amount of it, like resin material in there, like filling it up. There's uh, some like what going back to what some issues that you can run into is depending on the resins, it shrinks after, like as it's heating up and curing. it can actually shrink, and some
Mm-hmm.
resins can shrink significantly, just like Danny has with the vinyl, where he says he made a 3D printed head or something,
Mm-hmm.
made a mold out of that, and when he goes actually make the vinyl part or the actual electrode spinning process and such, it can be smaller than the original started off as.
Mm.
So those can also be issues, is that if you finally make your mold, and if you're learning, you haven't accounted for the shrink of the resin, you could end up with a part that's slightly smaller than what you were expecting.
Mm.
So in the case of like the hand holders, I did have to make those slightly bigger because when they did shrink, and the pegs were too loose.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So that,
So
yeah, that sounds like yeah, it doesn't it sounds like there could be potential issues as you go along.
yeah,
So it's not always
it's
an exact science per se.
no, not and there can be, but it's not going to be like there might not be exact. It could be some variances.
Mm-hmm.
If a lot of for casting resins, a lot of the companies actually put in the percentage of the variance of how much they expect the resin to shrink. But depending on the size of the part, like the more resin you put in there, the more hotter, because of the chemical reaction between the resins when it's curing,
Mm-hmm.
the more shrinkage you're going to have.
Okay.
So the smaller your parts, the thinner your areas, the less shrinkage parts, the less parts that are going to shrink.
Mm-hmm.
There's a variance in there that you'll probably have to work
But
with and
that's
figure
mostly
out.
with making molds in resin, though, right? Like if you were just
Yes,
gonna
not 3D
regular
printing.
3D print, is there more
Some
consistency with that?
there are some 3D there are some resins. I think that they will say there's shrinkage in those as well. I
Mm-hmm.
think the UV does tend to it does cure or heat up as well, so you could end up with smaller parts.
Mm-hmm.
And 3D printing, it depends on your printer, depends on your settings. Um,
Chat saying it's something called exothermic reaction. Is it?
yes, it is.
I
That's
don't know
the
what that
term.
means, but it sounds good.
Yeah, that's the term, is exothermic. It's the heating up of the resins. That's what
Mm-hmm.
causes the chemical reaction causes it to cure, and it heats up.
Okay. So since we kind of like covered a little bit on things that you've dabbled with 3D printing, and we'll talk a little bit more on other projects that you've worked with, but I want to kind of go backwards now and talk about like if somebody wants to get into this. Like if this is a hobby that, obviously they're in the doll hobby, but if they want to add on to their repertoire, like there's a lot of people that when joining the doll hobby, they get into photography. So they go out and they buy a camera or maybe some software. There's people that get into like sewing. So then they get, sewing needles or a sewing machine and patterns and things of that nature. Same thing for like other things like doing face ups, there's paints and all that. So with 3D printing, so if somebody wants to get into this, what are some of the bare bone basic things that they're going to need to get started?
Hmm. Well, obviously a computer, but
Right.
a, there are different programs that you can start off with. It depends on what you're trying to make. If you want to make something simple, there's programs like that are free called like Tinkercad or FreeCAD. Tinkercad, I think I've never really dabbled with it too much, but what I've seen is that it basically takes shapes, and you can put those shapes together and build on top of that, or cut away at things and make your
Mm-hmm.
designs of what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Essentially what you need is, yeah, a program like that. Tinkercad, FreeCAD, Fusion 360 is another one. That's what I use. That's a little bit more, I think, advanced. But it's also, they have a paid version, and then they have a free version for hobbyists. But
Mm-hmm.
it's excuse me, I'm trying to think, like, because I unfortunately I had a little head start. Like in high school, my school offered technology classes, so I was
Mm-hmm.
able to do CAD. and
Hmm.
learned that there. So I kind of took that knowledge and took it with me and used it there. Um, but I think really it just takes a simple object that you want to try and make, maybe even try to copy something that you can already see that's really simple and just
Hmm.
try and make that into a CAD program. Um, you would need to know the sizing, so do your measurements,
Does the
and
program, like when you create something in the program, does it, I guess you could say, can you measure it in pixels or do you measure it in inches or centimeters so that this way, whatever you sized out in the program, when it prints, it'll be that actual size in person?
most programs will do should do millimeters or centimeters or inches or feet, so your imperial or
Hmm.
metric standards. Pixels, I think you would, that's generally like something like if you're doing vectors, like Adobe Illustrator or something
Oh,
like that.
okay. Okay. So it's mostly in just regular, I guess, measurements or, the use of millimeters or centimeters, not inches though, right?
No, you can do it just,
Oh, you could do inches? Okay. So you
yeah.
can do
I mean,
measurements.
it's imperial. I generally have been doing with millimeter because I like millimeter has a more finer measurements than inches, and I don't have to use decimal points or fractions, or at
So
least fractions. Definitely
chat's
decimal points.
asking, what would we need to make a 1/3 scale weapon? So let's tackle that in like programming wise. So you were saying something about you use some, would you call it again? The Z something or?
Fusion
Oh, Fusion.
360.
Yeah, Fusion. So
Yes.
you said with Fusion program, there's a paid version and a free version.
Hmm.
Can you make like basic things, I guess, for your dolls, like a 1/3 scale weapon if you want on the free one, or would you
Oh,
have to have the
definitely.
paid version?
No, the paid version gives you a few extra features that day to day mostly you won't actually need an actual person unless you're actually trying to make a business out of it.
Okay.
Um, the hobbyist version is extremely powerful, and that's
Hmm.
actually what I did a lot of my stuff in, designing. And yes, you can do three. You can do third scale. You can do car parts. You can do large, huge parts, whatever size you want. The For fusion, I think the only limitation is like, yeah, there's some parts of it that you don't have access to that you really, I don't even find myself using most of the time or needing, and it limits you to having 10 files that you can access at a time. Now you can save unlimited files that I know of, but you just will have to only access to editing and saving at least 10 of those
Hmm.
files at a time.
Hmm. Okay. So I mean, if somebody were brand new and they were starting out, you think the hobbyist version of Fusion is something that people can pick up and start using, or do you maybe have an idea of like another program that might be more user friendly?
I think Tinkercad might be more user friendly. Like I said, that starts off with squares, triangle, like different shapes, 3D shapes that you can just place onto there and then start adding on top of that. Fusion has a slight learning curve, but I think you could get started just by watching some YouTube videos.
Hmm.
There, if there's different modes in how you do how you're trying to create something. You can do something in 3D, or you can do it in a sketch, which is more 2D, and then kind of what they call extrude or build that up
Hmm.
into 3D. Another one, if you find yourself good at drawing, that's also like modeling software, like Blender or
Oh, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
mhm. But I'm not that great at it because that's actually like if sculpting. Sorry, if you're not modeling, but if you're good at like think you want to do things more with sculpting and like
Hmm.
carving things out. There's Blender, and then it's another free one. It's kind of older. It's not Mesh Mixer is something
Mesh Mixer.
so that's one that's an Autodesk program. That one you can actually take a 3D file, like if you want to go to like Thingiverse or some other uh Thingiverse is a big one. There's others out there that Thingiverse has been around for a long time, and they have a place where you can go and download 3D files,
Mm-hmm.
generally STLs file format. And you can actually take those and place that into Mesh Mixer and modify that object. So that could be a good way to start too.
I've heard about
Is
that. Yeah, now that you mention it, a coworker of mine that started like messing around with 3D printing, he says if you're not good at programming or designing, there are websites that you can go to where you could just download the file of something. Like, for instance, if somebody made like a Terminator head in
mm,
like a program, you can essentially, the way he described this to me is you could download that file and then input it into, I don't know what program, maybe all the programs that use that particular file, and then you could just print that head out, and that's it, right? Is that
mm.
essentially what it is?
That's one way you can do it. Yeah, if take it, and if you just want to use it straight as is, yeah, you could take that file, and if your printer, depending on the size, if it fits on there, yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
could put it into your printer program. There's a few different ones. Some printers have proprietary software. There's also open source ones. Big one, probably one of the largest ones I think uses Cura,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's a and you could just put it in there and then create your file and either uh, send it to your printer or yeah, save it to a memory card and then put it in your printer and print away.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and then um, I know
Now I
chat.
should say there's a little more
I know Chad is
in
asking
depth in it.
about computer specs, and I want to delve into that in a bit, but I just wanted to talk about the programs right now. So right now, like what we've essentially covered was you have Fusion, which you use. There's Tinkercad, and then there's the, what was that third one that you said? It was is an older one.
I haven't used it. FreeCAD is another one.
Oh, FreeCAD's
Uh,
another one.
and I'm just naming ones that don't really you don't have to pay like out of pocket to use, but there's others out there that
Right.
are full blown. I mean, you could use Autodesk, uh, uh, CAD.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's blinking on my head actually of actual or there's a bunch of good other programs out there,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just naming a few free ones because it's just easy to get
Oh
into that
yeah.
way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I would probably go that route too when I get into it, just, to see if this is really something that I want to get into, kind of start off with the free programs first, and then
Definitely.
from there, like if I get really interested in it or I get good at it and I want to do more, I mean, obviously, like you said, there's a lot more programs out there that are available, but probably for a price.
Yeah, so Fusion 360, their paid one is more if you're trying to actually do a business. I think, I mean, I think I want to say it's $60 a month,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't too bad, but there are much more expensive
Mm-hmm.
programs out there as well. It's definitely it's better to start off at if you start off at a trial or a free program to
Mm-hmm.
see uh, if it's for you. Now there are some programs that like Tinkercad I think is a little more basic, and then like Fusion 360 at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
So like depending on your level of how comfortable you feel in dabbling getting into those programs.
Right. Okay. And what was I gonna say? And then once you start, like, getting into it, I know you mentioned it before. It's like YouTube is a great teacher.
Yes.
Like if you run into an issue, I'm sure you could like YouTube it, and somebody out there has some kind of a tutorial.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I know I find that issue for myself. Like when I'm editing videos and I'm doing video edits, I just go to YouTube and I go like, because I use Premiere Pro to edit. And I'm like, how do I do this in Premiere Pro? And I just like type it out.
Mhm.
And there's like hundreds of videos. So I'm assuming it's kind of the same way with like 3D printing. I'm sure there's quite a few videos out there like on how to make a box, or, how to make a face or something complex like that. I don't know.
Oh, there's tons. Yeah, yeah. I've been through a lot of videos. I've watched a bunch of different guys. I follow actually a few of them I follow now. Um, but and with even with Fusion 360, when I said I started off at least with a basis of CAD, but that was years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
it helped me with Fusion 360. But it's different than AutoCAD in some senses. So it's watching some YouTube videos definitely helped me a lot. And then even as I was getting further into it, it allowed me to learn new things and actually go back and fix some of my other designs.
Mm-hmm.
Or, for instance, like I guess you'll show it later, but like Chitose's hair clips, like I started that a while ago and then just set it aside because it just got too complicated for me to figure out. And then once I got better into it, I actually went back and it was so much more simpler
Mm-hmm.
to get it to the shape I wanted it after I had some more experience with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, to go on a similar kind of path. I remember, just using Microsoft Paint to make basic shapes and things like that. And then when I started using Adobe products and I got into Photoshop, I remember getting so frustrated because I couldn't even figure out how to make a square. Like it's not as easy. Like when you use something like Paint, it's just like square, and then you just make the square and any
Mm-hmm.
size you want, and it was so simple. And then I would get so angry, and you could ask my wife. Like I'd be sitting in my room yelling because I'm like, all I want to do is make a square, and like I can't make a square in Photoshop. It was like the silliest thing because you would see the button for square and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I want to make a square. But then when you would drag it, it doesn't make the square like it does in Paint, where it just makes it as you drag. It would kind of like if I dragged from upper left to bottom right, it would make the square, but it would expand going in a totally different direction in the screen that I was
Mm-hmm.
dragging it. And I'm like, why is it going in this direction? And then after I made the square, I couldn't move it because you had to change the tools to move it. So like
Mm-hmm.
when you use a program that's meant for I guess you could say professionals or something that's more in depth that gives you this creative flow to do all these minor adjustments, it actually in some ways makes it harder to do things if you
Yeah.
don't know how to use the tool properly, like
Mm-hmm.
which is Photoshop. And that was the problem I ran into. Going from Microsoft Paint to like Photoshop was a huge jump. Like I had to learn all these tools and all these different ways to use the tools just to make simple shapes or simple like titles or headings like for like a photo. It was crazy. So not to go too far off on a tangent, I'm assuming that's the same way with these computer programs for 3D printing. So if you start off with the more free trials or like the easier basic ones, you might have an easier time learning, I'm assuming, to make things. And then if you feel like your skills have surpassed what's available in the free version, then maybe you can make the step up into something like Fusion, which allows you to be more precise with your creations, but also, there's a lot more tools at your disposal, so it becomes harder to pick up because you got to learn the tools first, I suppose.
Well, Fusion 360 is they at least set it up as supposed to be beginner to like intermediate,
Mm-hmm.
and I think possibly a little advanced. And I think for me, I like programs that at least have the advanced features in it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I need to use them or not, at least I can like if I'm able to do something with the basic features, but it once I'm get feel comfortable with that and I'm able to step up and find that there's a faster way, but it's a little more advanced for advanced
Mm-hmm.
users. I like a program that actually has the ability to kind of scale like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Fusion 360 can do that. It's just, it's that once you just initially get into that dive in and start learning about it, it's just that it's the learning curve
Mm-hmm.
to get into it. I mean, it can be easy to draw a line in there and make a square. Or you can make. I mean, it's pretty easy to make a cube and shapes in Fusion 360. It's basic shapes. It's just learning how to take those or make other things with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was some pretty enlightening information. I hope that helped everybody in chat at least get a good idea of what they're looking at when it comes to programming. So let's move on. So because we could talk about this all night if we wanted to, but let's move on to our next part of what you need, and that would be the printer itself. So I know that there's lots of different printers out there. There's so many different companies, and then like you mentioned before, there's the filaments, and then there's resin. And I don't
Those
know
are
if there's
kind of the two most popular.
those are the two most popular ones. So like you have filaments, you have resins, then you have the printers themselves. And I know that the printers come in all these different sizes. Like I know Danny, when he shoots pictures of his shop or Instagram and stuff like that, and you see the printer in his YouTube video, it kind of like is hanging down and it starts just printing on the floor and it builds its way up, right? There's like that sort of printer. And then I've seen other ones where it's like a box on the bottom. It's like a black box, and then on the top is like this big clear case that you could see through. And then inside that case, it kind of prints like this thing in the case that hangs off a tree or something like that. And there's like liquid inside. And I'm assuming that's a resin one maybe, because it looks like it sprays like liquid out and all this other kind of stuff. So, I mean, not getting too far afield, but if you're a beginner, what's a good starting point? Like, first of all, would you pick filament or would you pick resin for a beginner to start learning?
I would think it depends on the size of things you're trying to print.
Well, let's keep it on 1/3 scale for dolls, because I mean our main focus is the doll hobby. So if we wanted to make like a handgun or a sword or an umbrella or something like that for our dolls, in a 1/3 scale, what would be good for that? Like, would it be more filament side or resin side that people can look into?
On that scale, and to have the detail, a resin printer would probably be better. Filament printers can have a good amount of detail, but the smaller you get on them, the issue with filament printers is because they melt the plastic, so they can extrude it to make the shapes. The smaller you go, that tip is 200 to 200, 300 degrees Celsius.
Oh, wow.
That's extremely hot.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to make something that small, the tip can melt that. As you're trying to print it, it's basically softening up that plastic and melting it as you go along. So if you keep it there too long, all your detail is just going to like kind of just melt away. Not flatter or other, but just the smaller things are going to be harder to do. It's possible, but it's just much more difficult. Resins, because they don't emit that much heat and they're basically curing it as it's being printed, it can create a lot of immaculate detail, just really fine detail. The issues with resin that I have, it's messy. It's resins aren't the funnest stuff to deal with in their liquid form, and cleaning up the products, and like if you spill it or something like that, it's not that awesome. And then there's between both of them, but I think resins might have it a little bit more, is the fumes that they emit. Like, so as they're printing, there's smells and stuff, so you've got to make sure to be in a ventilated area. Both of them generally have that issue, but I think resins are more the issue with that, because it's pretty much all resins.
In your opinion, would you say like the filaments are easier to work with and learn with rather than resins, but the detail is more in resins than the filaments? Is that, if I'm reading that right?
For me, I mean, I started off with filaments, and I think, I wouldn't change the way I learned it. I like being able to print with filament, and then filament printer, and then transitioning over and doing resins as well. Each one has their purpose. I shouldn't say transitioning from filament to resin, because I actually use both. Each one has a slightly different purpose, or it could be both. But the detail is definitely you're going to get, I think, much better detail out of a resin printer for smaller parts.
Okay. So then also, because I know you mentioned it before, and I didn't even think about this, so it's a good thing you brought up. I never even thought that was a thing, But when you have, whether it's a filament or a resin printer, I didn't realize the whole thing with the fumes.
Mhm.
So like I couldn't, like, where I'm sitting right now is pretty much where I do all my stuff, like, hobby wise, and it's a small little office. It's probably the size of maybe 3 telephone booths put together, and I don't even know if some people in chat even know where the telephone booth is anymore, because they don't really exist anymore. But it's like, maybe this room is about, if you take like 4 high school desks and like line them up next to each other, that's how big this room is. It's actually really, really small. So if I were to get a 3D printer, it would be in this room with me. And I don't think that's a good idea now that you mention that, because those fumes coming out in this little tiny room, that would not be a good idea. So I'm assuming that whether if you go filament or resin, you would need a well ventilated area. I never even thought of that.
They would say that for all resins. I think you'd probably safer if you're depending on there's a uh, material for called PLA.
Hmm.
That's kind of it's a thing a corn based. I think they call it a corn based product. It's a little more biodegradable and safer to work with in terms
Hmm.
of plastics for FDM filament printer. But I think yeah, in general, you don't want to be that close to anything like, because it's melting. So it's
Hmm.
burning stuff and melting things. You don't want to be in a small, like a tiny vicinity for that. And resin printer, anything with resins is you do not want to be kind of near that
Hmm.
unless you're like is well ventilated. Yeah, it can have a window open or have that those fumes going out somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
Some
interesting. I never
There
thought
are
about
some
that.
printers that have charcoal canisters or things. You can
Uh
also
huh.
get some, you can buy stuff, uh, but that adds to the cost
Hmm.
and can be pretty expensive in some cases. That'll allow you to kind of have it in a small space,
Hmm.
but I generally, yeah, you don't want to be in a small space like you're in.
Yeah.
Uh,
So because I live in a townhome, so I don't have a garage, but I'm assuming a garage would probably be a good place to keep your printer, probably, right?
that's where I've been printing for like the past year.
Oh, okay.
Um, the problem can be temperature though.
Hmm.
If it's like wintertime, if you have a cold winters, that can cause issues with printers.
Oh, yeah,
Not
because the
the
printers is, especially the filaments, doing it by heat. So if it's cold,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I could see
it's
that.
yeah, and there's some materials like ABS plastic
Hmm.
that hates getting cold. If you're while you're printing, you it's there's that and another one. I think PET might be another one.
Hmm.
There's a few others out there that yeah just aren't good for printing in cold areas or where it's not heated up. And even some resins, there's resins that you can print in varying temperatures. There are some of the ones I work with, they work better when they're warm or
Hmm.
hot.
Okay. So I have a couple questions here for you. Somebody asked, let's see, Tigraine asks, so is resin better for like a mini revolver, would you say?
If you're doing one for a doll, I would think so. It
Mm-hmm.
depends on how like the quality of the look you want it to be. You can do it with a filament printer. I think it might be a little more difficult just because of the shape of a revolver and getting it to print on that bed.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, most FDMs will print on here's the bed and it's printing going up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it's going to want to fall and you have to, it's what support it so it doesn't uh, move around too much and
Mm-hmm.
depending on the orientation. Resin will probably do a lot better for that. Because of just how it's inherently done. It's less heat,
Mm-hmm.
of course, and that's going to give you the better details.
Okay. And then let's see. Tempest says, my complaint with starting with filament is then I have to buy that printer first, and all I want to do is doll things in miniatures. But then she goes on to say, do you have a ventilation system set up, or are there pre-made ones?
So yeah, I mean, well, you're going to have to buy a printer either way if you're trying to do doll things, whether it's resin or filament. Good thing about it now is that when I first got my filament printer, my first 3D printer, prices were way high.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think at MakerBot and the brand I ended up with was called Lowspot. They're not as big as they used to be back then, but that printer was $2,500.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like that's like buying Supergirl and Batgirl.
I
Almost,
wasn't in
almost.
dolls at the time then, so it wasn't that.
But yeah, I mean that's it's interesting because do they have by any chance like a setup where because I know I've been looking into getting into painting because I also dabble in Gundam model kits, and I was thinking about doing airbrushing for the Gundam model kits, and I know we're gonna have a guest in another episode doing face ups, and I know it's like the same thing when they do airbrushing. But I've noticed that even on Amazon, they have like an airbrush station that you could buy. It's like $150, and like it's this collapsible box that you can like open up, and then it has like a fan inside with like a hose that you can point out the window to like
Hmm.
air out as you're printing as you're spraying. So my question to you is do you know if there's something like that maybe that they sell for 3D printers maybe at least to maybe that can help me like if I'm printing in my room maybe I can have something like that to put around my box and then put the hose out the window. Like do you know of maybe a ventilation system like that that's possibly available?
Yeah. And also to answer the question about like I don't have a ventilation system set up, but right now, yeah, I'm not printing in the home. It is in the garage. Um, and you can buy pre-made ones. I haven't looked too much into them. I've seen them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them can get pretty expensive, but they do have, and then also you can. There are people who yeah just even like I was talking about Thingiverse. Depending on your printer, it might if it's popular enough, especially for resins,
Mm-hmm.
there might be things. Although I have to get it printed or print it yourself somehow. Uh, so it's kind of like this circle thing that you could get to attach to your printer and
Mm-hmm.
get a like a hose and a fan to suck those fumes out and
Mm-hmm.
then just run them out the window.
Mm-hmm.
They do have some other systems that you can buy that'll suck them and they'll put them into like it has a canister or
Mm-hmm.
whatever that's like filled with charcoal or some other things that'll clean out the air or try and ventilate it out for you. Some of those systems, like I said, they can get pretty expensive. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's other companies that are doing printers now that will have a little tiny box that you can put inside the printer of a resin wallet. So it's kind of like trying to suck those fumes
Mm-hmm.
and cleaning them out as well.
Okay, and you know somewhat similar on that point is Jay Louisa in chat asks or says rather I know some libraries have 3D printers and the one near where I live has one. So my question to you is have you heard of anyone using like the ones in the libraries? Like can we actually do that? Like make one on a program at home and then bring it to a library and print it maybe? Do you think that would work?
So I haven't heard of anybody doing it, but I actually want some one of my local libraries does do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make a to a specific size, and I think they limit it to also a specific time of printing. You can't
Mm-hmm.
just like have a one that's going to take you 20, 30, 40
Mm-hmm.
hours to print.
Mm-hmm.
Has to be, I think it was like 4 or 5 hours or so, or something like that. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you can design it and take it to the library, or I think the one that I like, they offered a class or something. You bring in your computer, and they'll like help you with setting up and getting 3D printing going
Mm-hmm.
on in the library.
That's
And I
actually that's another good point that you just brought up that I totally forgot about. So since we're on that subject, is the printing time. I see in my mind. I don't know why I thought of this, but I thought it's like a printer at home, like printing out paper. Like even like when you print out colored pictures, like photo paper and stuff like that, it takes. I understand it takes a while to print, you know. So but I never realized that even something so small, like let's say you were to do like I don't know a kendo stick or something like that, like something small like that, would that take up a lot of time? Because I know these printing things they do take several hours.
it can, and it depends on the type of printer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the your layer height, how tall like each layer it is printing at. Um, well, the type of printer as well. I think I said that.
Mm-hmm.
And the orientation. So a kendo stick, if you're doing one, say for a doll,
Mm-hmm.
um, usually I guess it'd be something this long or something like that. I guess. Like, let's
Right.
see if I can get it straight. I'm going the wrong way. There we go. If you're doing with a filament printer, if you have it pointing up, you would obviously need some sort of support because it just being a thin thing, it's just going to want to flop over. It's nothing going to hold
Right.
it. So you're going to have to do something to keep it up, and you probably want to print it at an angle so it does actually have more surface area to hold on to as it's printing up.
Mm-hmm.
That would take a while because a filament printer prints it prints like a line at a time. It has to fill in that line and then go to the next layer and do that whole thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're talking about printing at an angle, it's also got to print that material, the support material, as they call
Mm-hmm.
it, to hold that kendo stick up. So that can take some time. That can take hours, if not a day or two, depending on, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
layer height.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it really thin, like what was it, point like 0.1 millimeters, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Probably go lower than that. But or if you're doing with a resin printer, it can print something that a little bit faster if it's because of how it prints. A resin printer it does the whole flat section at a time, a whole layer, whereas a filament printer has to do each part and fill it in.
Mm-hmm.
A resin printer basically displays an image of that whole layer at one time, and it all gets cured at once. So it does that one layer like that, or
Does the
in a
resin
couple seconds.
printer need as many supports as a filament?
It will still need supports.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe not as much, but it will still need some sort of supports to keep it there.
Mm.
So yeah, you probably, it depends. Like it depends on the size, it depends on your orientation, but it can take. I mean, I think at the very least you're talking about a couple hours
Mm.
at least.
So when you're
There are some resin printers that are getting like extremely fast
mm-hmm.
because of newer technology that they're working with, as opposed to the older style ones that cuts it in half or more. But you're
right.
still looking at some time.
Okay, so if you're printing at home, maybe it's not such a big deal because it's your own home. But if you went to a library to get things printed out, like you said, there's like a time frame. So if your
Yeah.
project that you're printing is like 20 hours, they might not do that, right? Because it's just
No, I mean one
taking
that
too long.
I I've described like 3D printing kind of, if I mean we're similar age, so like if you remember printing like actual like color printers or something from the 90s, like how
Mm-hmm.
long it took to just print a single page or
Oh
something
yeah,
like that, had to go like
yeah.
line by line, and it took like a whole minute, it felt like, just to print a single page.
Right.
And you have to, sometimes it would jam,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to pull it, deal with that, pull the paper out, clean it out, and
Right.
then start up printing it again. Same thing can happen with 3D printers.
Mm-hmm.
You can think it starts printing, you think you're doing well, something goes wrong, it fails.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not there to catch it, I think Danny's shown a picture of that. Like if you go home, like if you're at a library, of course you
Mm-hmm.
can't stay there the entire time. You go home, you come back, your printer, your thing you're printing, you might have gotten like, you're expecting it to be this high, and it turns out to be like this. And you end up with this spool of plastic that
Yeah.
you just extruded out, or this one big gob, and you just wasted material and time.
I
you're
remember
mad.
that post. Danny posted. I think he was making like a torso piece or something, and it just
Mhm.
went like totally like Leaning Tower of Pisa or something.
And it happens sometimes. It's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you can get it pretty consistent, but you're going to sometimes have failures.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're learning and you're doing it for the first time, you're going to have a ton of failures.
So patience is key.
Oh yeah. It's not just getting a spool of filament, putting it on the printer, and getting whatever you've want to print, and you get that set up right. Say you got your supports and everything on there,
Mm-hmm.
and you start printing. You still have to know the temperature that you need to print that filament at. The layer, the well, getting the model to actually stick to the build platform, your bed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes as you're printing, it can just come loose,
Mm.
and then you've lost your print.
Wow.
Then sometimes you can, if you have to get your settings right, knowing the temperature that filament can handle. Like it's sometimes if you have it too hot, it'll just come out in gobs, and or it just won't look nice, your print. Or if you have it too cold, you could end up with jams as it's printing out, or it just won't be able to print it out as nicely. It'll just the layer lines will be a mess.
All right. So
what I'm getting as well.
What I'm getting from this conversation is, if you're gonna start 3D printing, you need a lot of patience. It's the same for everything, though. I remember when I was learning how to work on cars. I mean, it was just a lot of learning and patience. Just it's not just getting the parts and putting them on. Like, you had to know how to take them off, how to put them on, the different torque levels. The different wires that are involved, the different liquids, things like that. So, and depending on what you use is always different. So it's just like anything else. So if anybody watching this live or is watching this another time, just know that if this is something that you want to get into, it's going to take a lot of patience and a lot of learning. But from what you guys can see, from what we showed you earlier, where is it? Getting it to something like this, it's the results is just awesome. You just got to get the patience to get there, right?
Once you get your first print or it gets clean, and it this is a resin print.
Oh, let me put it on the bigger screen so people can kind of see.
I don't know how well you can see it. It might be blurry, but
yeah, it's a little.
This is actually a Dolphy Dream hand holder that I printed out. And I still just have it on the supports.
Oh, so there's the supports. Yeah, so everybody can see that.
So it actually printed like this. And you actually have to have supports and things I don't know how well you can see it, but the parts actually don't end up inside the vat or where the resin's pulling out. So it took some time.
All right. And then so for 1/3 scale stuff for our dolls, right? In your opinion, if someone's just getting started out, like, what's a good size printer? Because I know they come in different sizes, right? Like, depending on what you want to print. So just taking into the consideration that we're printing stuff for dolls, what size printer is a good starting point for people getting into the hobby?
Well, I can't.
Or do they even do it by sizes? Like, is it like small, medium, large, or do they do it like, a 20 by 30 measurement? Like, I don't know. Like, how does it work when you're picking them?
Well, when you're talking, it basically is by the build size is based on the size of the build plate, or if it's an FDM printer. Well, actually both. Both of them have build plates, and also height, Z height. They're small. I start off my first 3D printer was, I think, by today's standards, people would probably consider that a larger printer. It's a 300 by 300 millimeter square build plate. I forget the actual. I think the height is like 270 millimeters tall. My resin printer it's a tiny thing. I can't even give you a scale, but it was not big at all.
Okay.
And I started off with that because, one, it was on sale. It was a popular printer. And so it had that's another thing I wanted to say. For printers, like, if you get something that has like a good following, a community behind it, that's gonna help you out loads of like figuring things out on how to get things printing and starting off. Get just some starting off settings just to get you started and trying to get things printed right. I think a small printer, like I think was Tempest Strike. I mentioned like the Elegoo Mars.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good printer to start off with. That's a like a small printer that'll fit on a desk or something like that, as long as you're not in it when you're printing, and not
Mm-hmm.
like huge vicinity when you're printing. Um,
But is there like a
yeah,
standard? Is there like a standard size, like measurement that you
there is
think is
not.
good to look
Each
for?
one can like
Oh, each one is different.
about similar sizes. Like the
Uh huh.
Lumars, I think it's similar in size to it's a brand any cubic photon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but they are slightly different in sizes. Like they might be bigger. One might be bigger than the other by like 10 millimeters or something
Mm-hmm.
in different directions. And then you have larger Elegoo Saturn is one I have. That's a kind of a medium-sized printer,
Mm-hmm.
larger format, and Anycubic Mono Photon Mono X. Those are medium-sized printers. If you want to print a lot of things at one time or some larger things, um, those would probably be the printers to go with. Now they do get bigger than that. I don't recommend anybody start off with that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have nothing but problems, and you'll probably do what I did when got my low spot, is just get frustrated with it and put it away for like 5 years, not touch it.
So a smaller one would be better to start out with. Just get like a small little printer, and I've heard this, or maybe not heard it. Maybe I read it somewhere. I'm trying to remember where I found it. But if you wanted to print something that's larger than the printer that you have, I think I saw it on a cosplay actually how-to video once where they were printing out something for their cosplay, and like the printer itself wouldn't build it because it was too large, so they built it in
Mm-hmm.
pieces
Mm-hmm.
that fit in the printer, and then they just kind of glued them all together, or like put them all together to make the one large thing. I'm assuming that even if you wanted to be more financially sound in making your very first printer project, you could probably get a small one and just do it that way, like print them in pieces and then kind of glue them together or something.
Yes, that's definitely a way to do it. A lot of the software that you use for 3D printers, they're called slicers, slicing software.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and basically, they means it takes an object and then slices it into smaller sections to
Mm-hmm.
actually that the print and converts it into something the printer understands.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of those software do allow you to take an object, and if it's too big, it sometimes allows you to cut it in half or in different orientations, so you can print it and then build upon that,
Mm-hmm.
like gluing the parts together. And that's actually what I've done for some of the stuff. I wasn't able to. I wish I could. I wish I did have a printer that big, but costs wise and just overall like availability, it's just like, at least for money wise, just wasn't a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see, how are we doing on time? Okay, so we've actually talked quite a lot. So the next part that I want to get into is probably the last piece of the three, I guess, that you need, and that's the computer, right? So because you need the computer to run the program, and then you need the computer to also send it out to the printer that you bought. How in depth, or how like monstrous or not monstrous of a computer do you need, like, in order to run these programs? Like, can you just, oh my goodness, hey, what's up everybody, Danny Chu's in the chat.
Oh,
hey,
hey,
hey
what's
there,
going
Danny, how you doing?
on?
I hope things in Smart Doll Land is doing good. Tell the team I said hi. Me and Keith are just chatting it up about 3D printers. So yeah, I mean, like, essentially, like, do you need like some kind of supercomputer, I think people are asking about, in order to make these 3D jobs? Or can you just, I guess my thought is, can I just go to Best Buy and just pick out like a $500 desktop or something like that, and can it still run these programs and be able to print these programs?
It's definitely possible. It depends on the program that you're using. I think, like I tend to use Fusion 360. I wish it. I think it's actually more cloud-based computing, because I've noticed that. I worked on a 12-year. Well, I guess now it's basically a 12-year-old computer setup that
Mm-hmm.
I had, and now I've just fully have a brand new computer that I built, and there's not really a big difference in performance. I think it's mostly the processing is done in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how elaborate you want it and you get with the models. But either way, I think you'll be able to do it with even a cheaper computer. It might be just a little bit slower in processing it if you're actually designing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the slicing program that you use for 3D printing, once again, it all comes down to the model. But I think small doll parts, you'll be able to do it just fine.
Okay, so like basically if people are getting to start out and let's say they do the whole thing where they're like, okay, so I'm going to start out with the free programs, either the Fusion Hobbyist version or, whatever other program that they want to use for 3D printing. You got the free one, so you didn't pay any money for that. And then let's say you get the smaller, 3D printer just to get your feet wet. So you spend maybe, I don't know, like $200 maybe, or $250 for like a decent small printer maybe. I know I've seen some go on sale at like Micro Center or something like that.
Yeah. Micro Center has them, and you can actually get 3D printers cheaper than that nowadays. Like I said,
okay,
it's a whole different world than when I first started, where I had to buy like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 printers. They're the Chinese branded printers like Anycubic or Elegoo or I think Reality.
Mm-hmm.
They have some really good printers, and you can get really good quality out of them. And might not even could cost you $100, could cost you a little bit more, maybe a little bit less.
That's not that bad. I always thought it was somewhere around the 200 or more mark. But if you could get something for like 100 or 150, that's actually a nice starting point. That's not really that expensive.
No, and yeah, like I said, you're not burning the bank and if you're just trying to start off and getting things going. Now, if you get your feet wet and you feel like you want to go above that, there's definitely a world out there for you.
Oh yeah. I remember I was talking to somebody on Twitter, like through DMs, because they 3D printed something that I really liked, and I was like, "What printer did you use for that?" And then they sent me a link for the printer that they were using, and it was some elaborate printer that was on Amazon. It was on sale for like $3,000, and I was like, "Oh, that's not the printer for me." I was like, "That's a professional printer right there." So yeah. I mean, for you guys watching out there or watching, at a later date that's not live, I mean, as Keith says, you can go as low as $150 for a printer. That's not bad. And then if you could use just like a regular computer, to print on, I mean, your computer at home, depending how old it is, might be able to just use the program now. It's not like you got to go out and buy a brand new computer with the brand new printer, right? Like it can work for some pretty older stuff. I'm assuming, as low as probably Intel, like i6, something like that.
You could do
running on maybe 12 megabytes of RAM or something, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know about megabytes.
I mean, not megabytes, gigs. The 12 gigs of RAM, sorry.
Yeah. And what I designed majority of this stuff on was a 12-year-old, a third generation Core i7 with I had 32 gigs of RAM, but I barely used that. You could get away with 16. I think you could definitely get away with 16. It could be a Core i5, maybe even a Core i3, but I think a Core i5.
That sounds good, because a lot of those basic computers that are sold nowadays in Best Buy or whatever for like $500, I think even those computers, they're already at i6 with like I think 16 gigs of RAM nowadays and a pretty decent video card. So I'm assuming that anybody that's bought a computer within the past maybe, let's say, 6 years should be able to easily, use a 3D printing program and print stuff, I would assume. Now, the processing speed, might be a little longer to, like, put it all together, but you'd still be able to use it, I would assume. And, judging on the chat here, Danny says that they use Elegoo Saturn of late for their resin prints. No need to choose high-end printers. Yeah, see? So even Danny Chu himself, he says, need to go and buy those expensive printers.
I've spied any cubic photon in some of his older photos. He had a few of those, and yeah, I mean, I have an Elegoo Saturn. I have a any cubic photon Mono X, which
Mm-hmm.
those two are comparable. The Saturn's a really good printer. I actually really like it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like been probably my most next to my Anycubic Photon. It's been probably my most reliable printer, but for Resin,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I said, and it's really really good quality.
Mm.
So yeah, no need there. Like you said, there's no need to go extreme. Like uh, what I can't think of the brand. It's like they have like $10,000, five,
Oh
seven
my
thousand dollar
gosh.
printers.
That's crazy. So yeah, I mean like listen people, my doll family out there, if you really want to get into 3D printing, it doesn't look like at least financially that the buy-in level is that high. So if you wanted to get started in this, you're looking at printer. If you already have the existing computer that can do it, I mean, you're looking at less than $300, right? Just to get started. Because it's mostly just the printer that you're buying at that point. As long as you have a good computer that runs, and you have like a free program that you're using. I mean, what like less than $300 just to get you started?
Just, yeah. Now you also have to look at the cost of your filament or resin.
Right, right,
Those can that can add up, and I would be prepared, especially when you're starting off. You're going to use a lot.
right. Because you're gonna be
Uh,
making all those mistakes in the beginning,
yeah.
right? To learn the
Uh,
process.
and to add on, filament does have, I think an FDM printer has a little bit better in terms of that because most of the time all you're going to need is just the filament
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. There are some other odd cases out there or different cases, but
Mm-hmm.
resin also you would need to invest in maybe something like some alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I just got one sitting right here for some reason, but
Okay. Isopropyl alcohol, 99%. Okay.
yeah.
Don't drink that,
Uh,
kids.
oh no, good God, no, nothing else. But that or like denatured alcohol tends to work as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to clean off the resin, the residual resin. Like as you're printing with a resin printer,
Mm-hmm.
there's still going to be uncured resin on there. You got to clean that off.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to need to deal with that.
Right.
And also, there's going to be the issue also with disposing of that stuff.
Oh my goodness. See, I didn't even think of that either. So
Yeah.
not only do we have to worry about fumes, right, which is one thing I didn't think about, but now, yeah, like when you clean it out, like how you dispose, whether it's a filament or whether it's a resin printer, what's the disposal process on that? I'm assuming you can't just throw it out in a normal garbage. Like I know
You
with
shouldn't.
cars, like when you have oil, like if I do my oil change at home, I can't just throw the oil in the grass or just throw it in the
No, no.
trash. Like there's
Yes,
specific
please.
places that you got to properly dispose of these, chemicals basically is what they are.
Yeah, they are.
So,
They're hazardous waste.
yeah, if you have a resin printer specifically because that has a lot of chemical liquids that's involved. What's the because I know a lot of my viewers are in the United States, but I know we do have viewers, all over the world as well, but for us here in the States, do you know what the process is on throwing away those chemicals, like after you're done printing and cleaning up? What's a proper way to do it?
It would be to take it to your local, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say junkyard, but
Hmm.
uh,
It's like like I know in my township we have like there's like the municipal building where like town hall is and all that, and then next
mhm,
to that is like the police department, and next to that is like the municipal disposal facility. And
mhm.
I don't know if that's where I would go, but it's a facility that takes like a lot of different things. If you're throwing around other wastes, like for me with the car industry, when you're throwing out oil, you could take it to I believe there's the junkyards that you could take it to that has a disposal facility, and then also you could take some garages will take it from you, but you got to pay them obviously for them to take it and dispose of it. So I don't know where
Yeah, that one
exactly
you
that
also
would
have
be
an
here
auto
in the
parts store,
States.
like will also take them to.
Auto parts store?
Um, yeah, like
Okay.
Advanced Auto Parts.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work for them, so I know. But um,
Okay.
uh, I can't think of the word for it. Wherever the local your trash goes, not they tend if if like whether you dispose of your electronics or like TVs,
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
what
So that would be
So
the
they also,
municipal, for me at least, that's the municipal
mhm,
building of my township.
at least locally for me, like that's the same place you can dispose of oil, antifreeze,
Mm-hmm.
all of those hazardous waste. They
Mm-hmm.
actually have like different bins for it. So that would be the best place to take it. Definitely not down the sink.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
don't
definitely
please,
don't
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
That would be terrible.
Um, yeah, don't not in the garbage or anything. There are like special places that
Mm-hmm.
will take hazardous waste.
And
And
is that the
that
same for the filaments too? Or the filaments you can throw in the trash?
filaments, yeah, mostly you can throw those in the trash, I believe. Like uh, some of them say that they can be biodegradable. Excuse me, like PLA supposed
Mm-hmm.
to be biodegradable, but that's kind of jury's out on that one. But it's just like normal plastics. Like you're generally throwing away your ABS, like anything like plastics, you're throwing
Mm-hmm.
away in the trash. So you could do that, or if you wanted to, you could take it to your landfill as
Okay.
well.
All
But
right.
definitely with resins, those are big. That's a big one that like even your water washable resins.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are ones that you can use alcohol, and then there's ones that also now supposed to allow you to use water. Still, do not let that go down the sink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all really good points that even I myself didn't even think about. Like, I feel like in the back of my mind I knew it was there, but like I didn't really think about it. You know what I mean? So that's some really good advice. So,
That's why
we,
I love resin printing. Before it's great detail, it's awesome, but it is I don't like it. I kind of hate it somewhat because of just it's a messy process.
the
It can
cleaning
be,
process, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, also, you know what another good question is? Now that we're talking about the cleaning process, I don't know so much about the filament, but I'm assuming resin is the same. So, is it also what's it called? Not good for your hands.
Yeah, that's what I thought you definitely wear gloves.
Okay.
Always wear gloves with dealing with
Okay.
resin. Do not if try and work with that. So resin has it's a it, inside basically it has a sanitizing
Mm-hmm.
thing, so it can basically sanitize your hands and
Mm-hmm.
basically if you have a long exposures to it, you can end up just getting allergic reactions to it, and
Oof.
it's so
Okay. So that's
it's
another
definitely
warning, people, that you need to
yeah.
be on the lookout for.
Yeah, always wear gloves. I've gotten it everywhere on my
Mm-hmm.
clothes and stuff. So wear clothes that you don't care about as well.
Like something that you
Uh,
would paint the house in or something that you know that you could get dirty and it doesn't matter. Can you
yeah.
just if it does get on your clothing though, like you get on your shirt or your jeans or something like that, can those be just thrown in the wash? You could just wash them in the wash, or do those, because of the chemical nature, should you throw those out and not use them?
Honestly, yeah, to answer that question, I do not know. I have thrown mine in the wash.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, but I, I've worn it and I've been fine. But
Mm-hmm.
I, I probably have to look that up. I don't even
Okay.
know.
Yeah, I wasn't
Uh,
sure only because again, and I hate to go back to this because I keep saying it all the time, but back in the day when I used to be a mechanic, we would do things where we would install basically they call them tonneau covers, but they're like roofs or
tonneau
covering
covers, yeah,
system
yeah.
for like a truck bed,
Hmm.
so the rain doesn't rain on anything. And I remember when I used to install those, I would have to cut into them like holes for screws to go in or any joints or things like that. And those things were made out of like resin or ABS or all different kinds of things. And I remember when I would
Fiberglass or
cut
whatever.
it,
Yeah.
it would itch. Like when it would get on my hands, it would itch like nothing. And
Fiberglass.
a
Yeah.
fiberglass, yeah, fiberglass too.
Yeah.
And it would just like, oh my god. And getting it off, I remember they used to tell me, I think, what was it again, to wash your hands in hot water or something
Mhm.
like that, because what it would do is hot water would open up your pores so that it would fall
And allow those
out.
fibers to fall
Well,
out.
they would
Yeah.
fall out, whereas if you do cold water, it makes your pores close up, and then it would kind of like pull it deeper into your skin or something like that, and you'd be like itching for like days or something.
Yeah. Oh, I hate fiberglass.
So is it the same with like the resin? Like if you were to get it on your hands, um, would it be the same process? Like maybe like wash with warm water to get it off and some soap, or what's like a
Yeah,
good?
basically, yeah, just wash your hands with soap and water. I don't
Okay,
think
it
it's,
doesn't matter between hot and cold though.
yeah, I don't believe so, but yeah, just make sure to, it's kind of like if you just, the instructions say like you get something in your eyes or whatever,
Hmm.
like wash it like
Mm-hmm.
really well.
Right.
Just wash it like
Okay.
with and, it's not horrible. I mean, I've got it on my hands. I've gotten it on my arm.
Okay.
But uh, just be careful and wear gloves all the time. There's videos of people who don't do it,
Mm-hmm.
and that don't follow that. Always wear
Mm-hmm.
gloves.
Would you
Um,
also need safety glasses? Maybe would that work?
it
Like if you don't
so
wear glasses normally, maybe safety glasses. I guess.
even wearing glasses, like I don't know how it is for you, but it feels like wearing glasses just means all it's going to do is go this way and just go around it and get in my eyes.
That happens too. I mean, I have been a lot really reckless in my youth when working with fiberglass, and I just use my regular glasses. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I mean, for resin or using the filaments, would you recommend also using some kind of
As a
protective
safety
eyewear?
measure, there's recommend wearing. I, I say I don't, but it definitely should. Whereas there's a chance of if there's a chance of spillage, it could possibly so take that caution. If it can get
Mm-hmm.
in your eyes, it's horrible. There's also like people they recommend wearing a mask so it doesn't end up in your mouth or anything like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you feel that you want to take that caution, yeah, take that caution. And if you, so far I have not gotten it like that, but it can happen.
Mm.
Definitely.
All right, cool. So we've covered a lot today. We've gone over different programs that people can use to get started with. We've talked about printers, between resin and filaments. We even talked a little bit about sizes, what to look for. Even like printing them at libraries and things or downloading programs. So if you guys have missed it, you can always go back on the video afterwards. And then your computer, which surprisingly enough that I learned today, you don't need a supercomputer. You can just use for the most part, if you bought a computer within the last maybe 6 years, somewhere around there, you should be totally fine in 3D printing. And then lastly, we covered like a lot of good information actually that I wasn't expecting to cover, but about safety. Safety handling the resins and the filaments and the fumes. So a lot of really good information that we had covered today for 3D printing. The next thing I want to go into is just cover some more things that you've dabbled into, like some other projects. I want to show, what is capable of 3D printing, especially for the doll hobby, what people can look into. So let's change back to the other view here. All right, so we have here our pictures of Keith's hand holders and hand holder holders that he's printed. But then we also have on the next thing here this thing. Can you explain what this is for people that are watching?
So I just decided to experiment with something like and try and stick with like that future look of like a Soul Marines for Smart Doll. And I wanted to think of something. I was trying to think of something that uh, the weapons I've been working on for the Solar Marines. I wanted them to be able to like hold them at their hips or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, for this, instead of having some sort of belt or holster, I was thinking something that was more universal that would hold the weapons properly. It didn't matter because there's also clothes that don't have belt loops.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
like trying to make it to work on the belts that like I wanted it to be a universe like for Mirai, hers is kind of like a skirt or
Mm-hmm.
something, uh and then even like the new I think that the solar I don't know the name now
The
this
Solar
thing
Marine
is
uniforms, the one that had
yeah
like what did he call it? I think it was the volcano and the glacier. I think it was like
yeah
the two
those
different
two
ones. Yeah,
I
I don't know because I didn't look at it yet, but they don't look like they have loops in it for anything to hang off of, right?
yeah I don't think they do.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I know
So
I ordered one. I just I haven't opened it yet. I haven't done the unboxing video for it yet, but yeah, I don't think it
yeah
has anything where it can hold. So
I
that's
want
why
to
you
get I
made
want
this
to get
thing.
those two, but yeah I want to get those two as well, but and the boots. Um, But yeah, so that's why I decided to go with something that was basically kind of go around
Mm-hmm.
uh the doll's waist,
Mm-hmm.
the girl's waist, and just be able to hold like the blade or something at their hips.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Right,
would
right.
also use the support socket.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's actually a really cool idea. I would have never thought that. I would have like if I were handy enough to make things, I guess I would have sewn a belt and just put the belt around the hips and let it hold by either, tightening it or hold on the hips. But I never would have thought of making something that could actually stick in the support socket to like hold things together. That's actually pretty cool.
I'm trying to utilize that. I feel like the support socket actually has a ton of uses besides
Mhm.
just holding the doll up.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm trying to utilize that in some ways.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really cool. And then you also did like a lot of different projects. So let's look at some of your other things. So here's the thing I thought was really cool. So you made Mirai's sword, from what I can see here, and it looks like you made a couple hilts, and then some, fashioned some blades. Now, is there a difference between the ones on this side and the one that where you can actually see the doll holding like the gray sword?
So the one where Mirai is actually holding the sword, that was actually printed in one piece and is actually smaller in scale.
Mm-hmm.
So the two that pictures on the left is a little bit larger because I felt like it was the hilt was just too small for her hands on the
Mm-hmm.
other side.
Okay.
So that yeah, the blade was printed one piece, and then the other the hilt on the top right is that was printed a single piece
Okay,
and
this one here, right?
painted. Mhm.
Did you paint like those individual orange pieces or those were printed actually?
I wish I could print those. No, those were painted.
Oh, so you hand painted all of them. Wow.
Yeah.
That looks like
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Oh yeah. Um, it
And then
actually
the
some
bottom one here with the blades, they're transparent. Like you could see through those. What did you use to make that?
so that was a mixing a bunch of like a few different resins together to
Mm-hmm.
try and create so it was translucent, and then I also used pigment dyes to make that orange
Mm-hmm.
um,
Oh,
and
okay.
printed
So
it.
so when you made it, it was actually clear, but then you added dye to get a little color into it, I'm assuming.
I actually no, I pigmented the resin at before I printed it.
Oh, oh, okay. Okay.
The one on the top, I can't recall if it's just how it came like out of the printer or if I had sanded it,
Mm-hmm.
wet sanded it. The one on the bottom has actually been wet sanded and then sprayed with clear to get that
Okay.
transparent look.
Okay. It looks really cool. It reminds me of like the sword blades that you actually get in like Gundam model kits. Like when you would build the
Yeah.
model kit, it kind of
So, I
looks like
mean, yeah,
that.
yeah. So the Mirai's blade is, I mean, it's an energy sword, so I wanted it to be a more
Uh huh.
have that look, and yeah, the Gundam sabers is what
Right.
appeared in my mind. It's been a double. Oh, well, I was about to make an unintended pun, but it's a double-edged sword with with doing that is the transparent because
Hmm.
for me at least the resins that I've used, I found out that the transparent ones, like the one on the left, felt more stiff. Whereas
Hmm.
when I tried to use the transparent and make it, it was a little more wobbly. So it's
Hmm.
been a little bit difficult trying to prevent that from like flopping over a bit. It's not
Hmm.
as strong as I would like it to be.
I see. And I'm assuming that these ones are somewhat stronger. Like they're a little bit more resilient to bending or something, or are they just as fragile kind of thing? I'm not sure.
Yeah, they can be just as fragile. They can be broken. I mean, this is actually, I'm not sure how well you can
Oh,
see that, but
that's cool. Hold
like
on.
you can
Let me
see
change
like that
views.
S curve,
Oh yeah, now we can
that
see it a
that
little bit
little.
better.
So yeah, you can see like that S curve that's
Hmm.
going on with it because it's kind of bendy. So
Hmm.
it's
Is there any way that you can, because we can see the bend now, is there any way you could straighten it?
this will probably straighten out if I like left it on the desk for a while. I think this was packed away improperly,
Oh,
but it's
okay.
also, um, but it could be straightened out. You could also probably run it under hot water
Mm-hmm.
and it would soften up and you could straighten it and or you could just probably just let it sit for a while and it would take care of itself.
Mm. Oh, actually, in chat, what's it called? Tempest was saying that you could use the support socket maybe to do tails. Like if a
The tails,
anime character had a tail or something like that, or like a
you
devil
can't.
character. That sounds
Yeah,
awesome, actually.
I think some people might have used it, even like doing wings somehow,
Mm-hmm.
like some like support for the wings. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Azur Lane or
Oh,
Kantai
I
Collection.
love Azur Lane.
Yeah,
I play that game too much.
yeah, every day. So what I would not when we talk about like dream dolls, I actually was thinking about that too. Like it would be awesome to have like the weaponry, the riggings. Uh,
Yes. Yes, if you made
so kind
like
of like
a
what they used for.
Kantai collection or an Azur Lane, how they have the ship parts hanging off of them.
Yes, it's kind of like
Yeah.
what they do with Figmas.
Mm-hmm.
Like so they're attached to there, and so you have all the rigging coming out. So
Right.
I don't know if the support socket could handle all that weight, but it'd at least be cool to like that would be the starting point just to have it
Oh my
held in
gosh.
place by that.
Keith, you're giving me ideas now. Now I want to make a custom Azur Lane doll and like have somebody, maybe I'll ask you to print me out some 3D ship parts.
I'm really trying like once I get into it like or get some of these other things taken care of, I really want to look into making some of the riggings and see
Yeah,
about
that's
doing that.
that's actually really cool. I never thought of it till now. That would be an awesome project.
Yeah.
So let's keep moving on because I know you have a couple other things that I have here. Which let's see. Oh, so this one here. This one is the weapon for Haruka, right? That you made.
It's not showing up right now.
Oh, did it go away? Oh, wait, no, hold on. Ha, I didn't change the
There you
view.
go.
There we go. The Haruka's weapon, right? I assume.
Yes, that's her. And right now all the names are escaping me, but yeah, that's the blade. That's the basically kind of ninja star.
Mm-hmm.
For not sure.
Oh, there you
So
go.
this is
Hold on.
probably a almost like a more completed version.
Oh yeah, because I see you painted it a little bit.
Yeah, so this is black. Did I paint this or I printed it black? I think I painted it, but yeah, these will be like transparent blue.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
That's really
that's
cool.
Haruka's.
That's
This
really
took some
cool.
time designing. It's actually like it may not look it, but it's really interesting. At least
Right. I can see on the picture that we're showing now that there's like holes in there, kind of like rivets, like that you would like put into metal to like keep pieces together, like that little design, and I could see the little circle shape in the middle. So
yeah,
there is some detail in just the regular mold itself that I think that
yeah,
looks really cool.
it's tiny, but there's a and that's where the beauty of resin printing comes in. You would
Mm-hmm.
not be able to achieve that with normal filament printing.
Mm-hmm.
All those little holes would just be gone. It
Mm-hmm.
might not even print them or
Mm.
try to.
And then let's keep things moving. We have another picture here. So these are the little pieces, like the hair pieces for them. I love the Chitose one because obviously I'm very biased. Like I love Chitose and everything about her. So seeing the little like pieces there is really cool because normally like on the website for Smart Doll you won't see those hair clip pieces on her product page. But if you look in the other parts on the Smart Doll website, like the concept design of Chitose, like the
Mhm.
original 2D anime drawings of her, you definitely see those little hair clip pieces, which is like really cool. You were able to recreate them. I think it looks nice.
Yeah. Well, another thing that took some time. It's like it's so small,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't realize the amount of time that went into designing that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Hers, even though I think it's more simple than Haruko's weapon. Those
Mm-hmm.
took me a longer time to get right. At least get to the way
Really.
I felt it was right. There's at least um, because I use Fusion 360 as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like a sculpting program like Blender uh, or ZBrush.
Mm-hmm.
It it took me a longer time just to get those angles and curves in properly. Because I think if I had known how to sculpt, it would have been much easier and less time consuming. But trying to get the right shapes and such into those Chitose's hair clips on Fusion 360 took me a long time.
Mm. Mm. And is it held in with magnets? Is that how you're
They are.
keeping it on the hair?
Yes. So
Okay.
I just you can't see in her head, but I did design my own magnetic hair uh, visor piece to go inside there that would hold both the magnets
Mm-hmm.
evenly on both sides.
Okay, and I'm assuming it's the same thing with mirror eyes as well, where you have
Yes.
the there's a magnet. I'm assuming in this middle piece
Yeah.
right here.
Yes. Yes.
Where did you keep it on these though for Chitose? Is it like here at the end, or did you put it in these things, like these two
They're
points
actually on the right up,
right
kind
here?
of in the middle of the top parts. Yeah.
Oh, okay, like over here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool though.
Telepathic wave transmitters. That's the only name I actually remember now. Jose's hair clips.
Those hair clips look really cool.
Thank you.
Let's see. We got this next one is actually a thing that Danny Chu made for himself, and then I guess you really took a liking to the idea and created your
Oh
own.
yeah.
So let's show people what we got here. So Danny Chu made a bike for his dolls, and this is like a rendering, like a computer rendering of what the bike kind of looks like. And he made one for his dolls with all the computer parts in it so it can actually work as a PC. And you saw this and you did your own right there, and that looks
Yeah.
awesome.
Once I saw it as an April Fool's joke, I was like, I love that idea. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Um, I had never seen anything like it, and I was waiting. I was like, oh, that's something I wanted to come out with. I really would love to have that. Um, but then I started, as the time went on, I started thinking, I was like, well, judging by pricing of all the other things of,
Mm-hmm.
smart dolls, like, would I be able to afford it? And um, would and Danny's a busy guy, I know that. So, would he actually be able to continue it on? I mean, there's been projects that unfortunately have been dropped off
Mm-hmm.
as well. And I was wondering those three things: is it truly an April Fool's joke?
Mm-hmm.
Could I afford it when it finally came out, or might not have the time to actually create it?
Right.
And as I started thinking about that, I decided to challenge myself. I was like, can I actually do this?
So
It's
let's
a
let's
little
actually talk about that. Like when you say, "Can you actually do this?" Is all the pieces that we see here in this picture, is this all 3D printed? I mean, obviously aside from the computer parts that you bought, but the skeleton, is that all 3D printed?
every single part of the frame except for the tires is 3D printed. I 3D printed everything and except for the main frame of the bike
Mm-hmm.
because I had to actually get somebody else, a company, to source that out and print for me because it was just too big for me to print on my printer. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
fit, and I didn't want to cut it into pieces because that's the
Mm-hmm.
main frame. I need that to be one solid piece.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else I printed myself.
And are they? Because now that we've talked about it at some nauseum already, uh, is this filament or resin printed?
So everything there is filament printed except for the lenses for the headlights, the taillights, the handlebars, at least the little brake and clutch
Mm-hmm.
bars, and then the little stand that's on the bottom, the little clear,
And
whitish, clearish
those other
pieces.
pieces, are those metal or?
Those are resin.
Oh, those are resin. Okay.
Yeah, I use the resin printer for those.
Oh, and that's
But
really cool. And what about the tires? Like, how did you get the tires?
so the tires actually, I've discovered they're for an electric scooter.
Oh, okay. So you
So
didn't actually have to
uh,
make anything. You just kind of
those I
bought
didn't
them.
have to print. That would have been a pain. That would have been, I mean, the rest of it was a pain because it took hours to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that would have been a pain and just to get the treads and even
Mm-hmm.
the markings. But yeah, this is
Oh
it right
my
here.
God. Wait, hold on. Let me change view. Like, now that you're holding it up, like, right against you, you could
It's
just
huge.
see the
It's
size.
huge.
Oh my
So
goodness.
when you read Danny's description, it is not small. It is
Oh
not
my
a small thing at
goodness.
all.
Look, in the picture, it looks like it's small, but now that you're holding it up next to you, that is gigantic.
Yeah, so this is directly up to my head right now, and you can't even get the whole thing in there.
Oh my goodness, that's big. I
It's
see it's
huge,
empty
and
now, though. You took all the parts off, I guess?
yeah, so I have a version two.
Oh, okay.
This one was my challenge to myself. Could I design it? Could I
Mm-hmm.
actually print it using my 3D printer and
Mm-hmm.
actually get it in there? And I successfully was able to do that, but there were some fixes and things after printing this that I wanted to make.
Mm. That's really
So
cool.
I did a second version, and I probably won't be able to see it, but this one I made more closer to Danny's design, where his is made out of laser cut acrylic.
Mm-hmm.
I did it out of a laser cut MDF board.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually sourced that one out to be made.
I see. So when these computer pieces were on the bike, when you assembled it, I'm assuming it's fully functional. Like, did you test it out and like actually like I don't know like play video games off of it or something? Like,
Yeah, it's fully functional. I used it for a while before I decided to upgrade it to the new frame. And
mhm.
actually, what's on my desk right now, what we're talking through right here, is the computer.
Oh, okay, okay. So
Uh,
currently
uh,
in use.
yeah, currently in use.
Oh my goodness. Before we move on and talk about other stuff, I just want to acknowledge because there is a couple people that showed up later on in chat. We have Somi Animations is here. Hey Somi, what's up? Long time no see. Um, my ding ding dong. I remember you from other videos. Your name always makes me laugh. It's nice seeing you here again. Magical Kit Kat Girl Gaming is here, people. Welcome, Magical Girl. Honeybee also welcome Honeybee for joining in the live stream. If you've missed what we were talking about before, we actually just a quick overview. We went over 3D printing, like how to get into it, programs, different printers, computer specs, and safety. So definitely, if you've missed that part, watch it later after the stream. You can rewind and watch it from the beginning. Let me see what else is here. Let's see. Tempest says, I always imagine attaching tails. Oh no, we talked about that. And then what else is on here? Just people saying that you did an amazing job, Keith.
Oh, thank you.
And Kat is saying the amount of talent in this community is mind blowing. Well done. So look at
Thank
that.
you.
Look at that. You did good, my man. So yeah, that's the 3D printed bike. Pretty awesome. I love it. So let's see. We're gonna move on. This brings us to our Dream Doll section. So I wanted you to participate in the Dream Doll, and you actually had a recommendation. This was your recommendation of a doll that you wanted to have seen made or maybe make at a future date at some point. And the one in question is actually going to be two separate dolls, but the same character.
Yeah.
So let me see. We're going to move it over. So this one, for those of you that are not familiar, this is going to be Tenchi Muyo. So if you're not familiar, Tenchi Muyo has been around for a long time. I think the original series was what, like early 90s? Maybe
1992.
1992, the original series, and there has been
Or for the OVAs.
all
Not
different
really the
series
manga.
afterwards. I think there's even a new one that's going on now, isn't there? Like there's like a new Tenchi universe something.
It's like the fifth OVA part, which I
Mm-hmm.
think just concluded like last year, I think.
I'm not familiar with the newer versions, but when I was younger, I definitely watched the original. I saw the
Yeah.
original Tenchi Muyo. And the characters in question that we're going to be talking about is Tsunami, which is this one here in the middle with the blue hair, and the other one, Sasami, right? Which is the younger looking one. So we're going to be talking about them. Let's move on to the next part. So first off, let's talk about Sasame. So Sasame is
Sasami.
Sasami. I'm sorry. Can you let our viewers know that are not familiar with Tenchi Muyo? Just let them know, like, kind of like a brief overview of what the anime is about, and then this character, like a.
Hmm. Well, it's been a while since I've watched Tenchi Muyo, but just a brief background on why I picked it is Tenchi Muyo was when it first aired on Tsunami and Cartoon Network. After watching Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, Sailor Moon, all those different ones, it was like the anime that resonated with me that was different than all those villain-ish style animes
Mm-hmm.
and really piqued my interest. Because of, I guess, the relationships between the characters and like Tenchi and the girls around him. That was just something I had never expected or seen
Mm-hmm.
before. To I always find it just difficult to describe anime, like to give it a background, because there's just so much going on in
Mm-hmm.
in the series. But I guess Tenchi is is a guy who is training with his grandfather in the mountains, and just awakens a demon in the
Mm-hmm.
cave who basically tries to kill him in the first episode.
Okay.
The demon girl, who, like his family, according to the story, has been kept in the cave for
Mm-hmm.
I think thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
or hundreds of years at least. Uh, oh, it's so much. It's like it's hard to describe Tenchi Muyo,
Yeah, I would
but
I would actually help you out in describing it, but like it's been a long time since I've seen it. Like I saw it when it
yeah,
aired in the 90s, and I just remember it having a profound effect on me. Like the show was just, it's like you described. It was different for its time. There was nothing like
yeah,
it during its time. Nowadays when you watch anime series, there's kind of a lot of shows that model itself after Tenchi.
mhm,
So it's definitely a good show. If nobody has ever seen it, if you're not adverse, because I know some people are adverse to watching old anime just because they can't get over the older
the
style,
grain,
and
yeah,
the
the
grain.
style, yeah,
But if you are not turned off by those kind of things and you're interested in a really good story, try the original Tenchi out. It's really really good. And if you even want
yeah.
to try the newer stuff, I haven't watched the newer stuff, but I assume it's on par. That's my assumption.
The first, so the Tenchi OVAs, the Tenchi Muyo, the first part, and it's like 6 episodes, and then like the second one. I think there's the best ones outside of like Tenchi
Hmm.
Universe, Tenchi in Tokyo, or
Hmm.
Tenchi Muyo GXP isn't that bad, or Grimgar, so many different ones that are part of that universe.
I see some
Even ones that
people.
are
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna
Uh,
say even ones that aren't named Tenchi in there.
okay. And then I see some people like are actually commenting on this. Is that Magical Girl would like to see a Tenchi Muyo
Mm.
characters. Tempest says Tenchi Muyo is one on Yahoo groups, and that's a character I played. Oh, she role played one. Uh, let's see. Jay Luisa says it's the first real harem anime in space.
It
I,
is
I think
actually
that
it is
is.
like kind of like the
I think he's
first.
right on
Yeah, yeah.
that. Then Magical Girl says it's reverse isekai. Would you?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. That
I mean,
that does.
he found out, Jirai and all
Mm-hmm.
the other aliens that existed, and demons and such.
See, Somi says I heard of Tenchi Muyo but haven't seen it. It's another anime I'll add to my watch list. Definitely, it's a great character.
Yeah,
A
when it aired in
great
2000,
series.
that's yeah. When it aired in 2000, that started my now 22 years of anime fandom. I wish I had my anime collection up. Alas, I have recently moved, so all my anime is in boxes, but I have a wall,
Well,
and that's
hopefully, if we can get you back on the show again at a future date, maybe talk about other things doll related, we will get to
yeah.
see that anime wall. Who knows? But going on to this character, why'd you pick her in specific?
Well, well, you kind of actually went and helped him because I named like Susami and Tsunami just because it was like the same character. But one, I like the character of Susami, just her and Tsunami. The uh, at least from the English version, she had like a maturity to her, and she was but she still at times could be a kid. I love her the long twin tails. I'm a sucker for
Mm-hmm.
long hair. And just like the complement between her blue hair and the pink eyes, just
Mm-hmm.
as I would love all the Tenchi Muyo girls as dolls, but if we had to start in a dream doll, I think it would be Tsunami or Sasami.
Okay, so let's go with Sasami. So this is her face. That's one of the clearer pictures that I could get of her. And I have a couple suggestions, so let's talk about them. First up, we have from Dolphy Dream, you have DCH 21 and DCH 10. Then we have DCH 13 and DCH 20. So my feelings about this is I picked 21 and 10, these two up here, mostly because I think the eye shapes kind of work with her. Now, obviously, in this picture, she's more of an excited face, so the eyes are a little
Mhm.
bit more exaggerated, but her normal look is very wide eyed. Very big, ovally kind of eyes. And I think that these faces kind of complement that pretty well. And then the 13 and 20 on the bottom, I kind of pick these because they have like a semi open mouth and an open mouth. For those of you that don't know, like you can pretty much mod anything on a face up and change it to the way you want. The eyes are probably I would think are the hardest one to change if you wanted to change. But the mouths, I've seen people do crazy things with mouths, like all different kinds of shapes and sizes, like open mouth, closed mouth, one fang, no fang, like tongues, things like that. So that one I've seen modded a lot, but the ones I don't see people modding too much are the eyes. So I kind of picked these based on that. So the top two are the eye shapes, I think works, and then the bottom two I think would also work with the mouths and the button nose. But what do you think there, Keith?
I think I'm going like a DCH 10,
Mm-hmm.
and I think DCH 20 is kind of staying with me.
Yeah, you think those would probably work really well for them?
Yeah, I think probably like DCH 10 would be the one I would go with. I like the shape of her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, and it's probably since the twin tails are going on there in the background already, but this is like it just sees
Because it kind of helps envision
Sasami.
it.
Yeah.
So if you're going to make a custom one of Sasami, then these might be good starting points. If there's any other head choice that I think you guys might think would help or would be better choices, definitely put it down in the live chat, or if you're watching this at a future date, put it in the comment section down below, because you never know, Keith might make one at some point, or somebody else may want to make their own character, and having these head choices would kind of help envision that. Like, and that's kind of like the whole point of the dream doll section, is just to kind of get
Really
ideas.
considering 3D printing a Nazaka and a Kamadake.
Mm-hmm. I think let me see. So other than the Dolphy Dream heads, I also picked out some Smart Doll heads. Now the Smart Doll heads, there isn't too many that I thought made a lot of sense for at least the anime style for Smart Doll, but the ones that I thought would look good would be obviously Mirai. I think she's like kind of like a go-to face for almost every anime character. She can kind of
Yeah.
like morph into like whatever she wants to. Um, let's see, and then I got Melody because I think Melody's eye shape is a little bit more oval than Mirai's, like vertically up and down, and I think that kind of mimics what she's got going on here. And then lastly, I picked Haruka because Haruka kind of looks like her. And I don't know if it's because the twin tails is helping, the
Yes,
look, but
it's
I
just
kind of like think that Haruka could make like a good Sasame. I mean, what do you think there, Keith?
yeah, definitely Haruka. I mean, Melody and Mirai, especially now, they're the same face up, or at least the same head sculpt. Uh,
Are they? Oh
so
yeah, they might be. If for some
yeah.
reason, maybe it's just the way that the eyes are painted that gives the illusion of the eye shape being kind of different.
Mhm.
Because I feel like Melody's eyes are a little bit more vertically longer than Mirai's. But again, I've said it multiple times in almost every single video that I do, is that I am horrible with telling differences in faces. So like if they're not easily identified to me, like kind of like like the DCH 10s and the 9s and whatnot, like it's hard for me to tell which is which. Now I know the Smart Dolls have a code. Like there's like, G02s and COSs and, all these other codes, but I'm not familiar with all of them. I kind of
Yeah.
just know characters by their faces. So I'm like, oh, that looks like a Mirai or that looks like a whatever. But sometimes, and I said it again, I've said it a lot of times in my videos, that like just changing an eye color or the color of makeup or the style of the wig really changes the look of a doll, to where at least to my, layman's eyes, they look like totally different faces. So, now that you mention it, with the whole Mirai and Melody sculpt being the same, like just the differences is just staggering to me. But yeah, I mean, you could use either or. And then Haruka is just Haruka.
Yeah. Yeah, I think well, at least like as far as sculpt wise, I think like the Mirai sculpt, some of the older ones they don't really have a code. Like the newer ones, like Genesis and
Hmm.
the semi-real ones, they start having code. I haven't like think like Mirai sculpt is just it's referred to as Mirai, but if you go into the community, they'll I think they might even call it like a FO1 or something like
Hmm.
that.
And I think
Uh,
Chitose is the same too, right? Like the OG Chitose is its own sculpt, right?
yes, she never. I don't
Yeah.
think any other doll had that. Maybe Gurai. I don't know,
Yeah,
but I'm good.
Gurai is using Chitose's face, yeah, but I don't think
Yeah,
anyone else has ever used Chitose's face other than herself and Gurai.
yeah.
And the interesting thing about that, and I'm not going to really get into it now because it's not my story to tell, but if anybody wants to ask Danny Chu, like maybe if he's still in chat, I don't know if he is because he's a very busy man, but if anybody ever wants to ask him, there's actually a funny story about how Chitose was made. Like, maybe one day he will tell everybody the story, but he told me once the story on how she was made, and it's actually quite funny. So if you guys want to ask him, bother him on Facebook or Twitter and Instagram, be like, tell us the Chitose story. He
I haven't even
might,
heard. Yeah.
he might tell you guys. It's a really interesting story though, but I'm getting a little bit off on a tangent. Those are my choices for Sasami. Now to the next one. This is Tsunami, right?
Yes.
And Tsunami is, my understanding is that she is a goddess or a god that took in Sasami and they became essentially one being, and it's like an older version of Sasami. Am I explaining that correctly?
In a sense, Tsunami is she's a goddess, one of three sisters, and Sasami, when fell and was basically dying, Tsunami actually ended up merging with Sasami to save her life, and now they basically are the same being.
Mm-hmm.
And Sasami will grow up to be and look like Tsunami when
Mm-hmm.
she gets older.
So we have a little bit more of a mature face, obviously, because she's older or depicted as older in this. So we're gonna do Dolphy Dream first. And these are some of the choices I came up with. You have 16 and 8, and then 14 and a mystery one. This one came out of left field for me. So let's talk about the one with numbers first, right? So I kind of picked 16 and 8 because I feel like the eye shapes complement her look a lot better. 14 is kind of close, but not really. And then with this one, with Toa, I wasn't even looking into Toa, to be honest. I was looking at more so the heads that you can purchase, like separately. Like, I think 1 through 5 is discontinued. So you have like 6 through 27, and then 11 and 18 are specifically reserved for D-chords, so you can't get those. So these are the ones I was usually looking at. But then I started looking into the standard model dolls, and when I got to there, I think Toa, at the end of the day, kind of fits the bill, right? Like, what do you
Yeah,
think?
it just works out so well. Um,
I thought so too. Like, I was looking at these three heads and I was like, 16 is probably my favorite. And I was going to keep it with three different heads. And then I saw Toa and I was like, oh my gosh, that actually looks like her. So if you wanted to make a tsunami, you could probably use Toa in order to do so.
yeah, I think for Tsunami, and I think Toe will definitely be the number one. I could see DCH 16 for me
Mm-hmm.
a little bit,
Right.
but Toa is, I think, the definite winner out of all. I mean, the color scheme of her hair and eyes are exactly the same in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like it's like it just works.
Yeah, it definitely does. Oh, and for you guys, if you're not paying attention, Danny Chu actually just tweeted out he's doing a drop soon. So, hopefully we get to finish this before he does the drop so we don't have people leaving in the middle of the stream. But we're almost done here, people. So,
That's why they have different tabs.
yeah, they have different tabs. Okay, so stay tuned. But keep on the lookout. He's going to be doing a drop sometime soon. We don't know what that is yet. So yeah, those are my choices for Dream Choice, for Dolphy Dream, and then we have some Smart Doll choices, and I couldn't find anything that I personally thought would work except for these two, which I have Challenge and Knowledge.
Mm,
So I thought if you're gonna use smart doll heads, maybe these two would be good, but I'm not entirely sure. I just think the eye shape for challenge works,
yeah.
um, and the eye shape for knowledge works. But the only problem with knowledge is because she's semi-real, so she actually has like the nostrils, so you don't get the cool anime button nose kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think challenge looks good. I'm trying to remember what I know there's a Kanata alternate which had her smiling, but I can't remember what Kanata looked like when she was smiling. Or at least the sculpt in general.
Hmm.
I've just got the scowling Kanata in my head. So I would like to I can't think of what her oh there's uh Athena and Kizuna.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Athena and Kizuna would use the same sculpt.
Yeah.
Because
And
they have
same as
more like the
Kanata's.
narrower eyes. Yeah,
Hmm.
so that would work too. I just didn't. I didn't think of it at the time, but yeah, maybe Kanata would work pretty well. Or
Yeah.
because
And
he's not selling Kanata right now, so you would have to get an Athena
or Kizuna
or a Kizuna in order to.
if she's available. I'm not sure.
And I think Kizuna's gone now. I think it's just Athena, right?
Mm,
I'm not entirely sure. We'll have to look that up at some point.
yeah. I mean, I was trying to keep up. You remember the collecting, like the whole compilation of
Yeah,
Smart Doll products I was trying to compose.
yeah. You had an
Kind of,
Excel sheet or something like that.
yeah, it was a spreadsheet table of it and of hundreds of products, and
Hmm.
it took me a long time to get together, and now I'm behind, but so I can't really remember what's available and what's not at the moment.
Oh, Magical Girl Kit Kat Gaming is saying that if you want a collab on a custom, she would make your dreams come true, Keith.
When I get the chance, I've got a lot of stuff to take care of, but when I get the chance, and actually thinking right now, I might put the Stingy Moyo on the back burner and go with an Lane character,
Oh,
maybe.
oh, an Azur Lane character. Yeah, now that we're talking about it, I'm kind of like interested in one too, because
Yeah,
I didn't even
since
think
you know,
about
like
that.
New Jersey is kind of at my top right now.
I wasn't lucky enough to get a New Jersey. I was
Oh,
very sad.
sorry.
I have almost every good ship, almost, but I don't have New Jersey, which she's
So I
like the
just started
best one to
playing it.
have for your
Oh
main
yeah,
fleet.
yeah.
It's
I mean, I
like,
just started playing a little over a year ago, so I missed out on shoot like the some of the URs, but now I finally got Shinano, so I'm happy.
hmm I just got Essex, so that's a good one.
Ah,
I want Centaur, but I haven't gotten Centaur.
no, I don't have it yet either. But yeah, I guess back to that would be the challenge, I think, for Tsunami.
All right, so normally we only do one thing, but for today's episode is special because we have a guest. We're gonna do both, and our guest has suggested an anime for Shizusan's anime corner. So let's get into that. Oh, before we do that, Batman Jackson, what's up? Joining the chat.
Hey,
What's going on? I have, because she's on loan to me, I do have your Batgirl here, Batman Jackson. She's keeping me company for today's episode. And I will mail her back. Just let me know when you're home so I could send it to you. But thank you, Batman, for loaning me your Batgirl for the unboxing video. Let's see. So then let's go into the anime corner. So for today's episode, Keith has suggested that we look at this one, which is called Isekai Ojisan, or Uncle from Another World. Now, I haven't watched this one, so Keith, if you can describe this one, like, why should people watch this? Like, what do you find interesting about this?
well, it's basically a reverse isekai in a sense. I mean, kind of. So we have uh, this guy who was hit by truck, uh, and he was put into a coma for 17 years. And so 17 years later, he comes out of a coma, and he had spent that time in isekai world.
Oh, so
Uh,
the 17 years he's in a coma, he was actually in another world.
yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so now this one's kind of, I like this because it's what happens if, like, instead of him dying and being reincarnated, he's just like waking up and like 17 years later and has to kind of come to terms with how the world has changed. They dated in 2017, so he 2000 was when he got put into a coma.
Mm-hmm.
What I find fun, and for me, it's a hilarious show because one, I was kind of, I know the stuff in that time. He mentions things like Sega Genesis or Sega, and like he wakes up and his nephew is comes and meets him at the hospital after he wakes up, and no other family has come to see him. And one of the first questions the uncle asks his nephew is, "What's the status of Sega? Like, did they win the console wars?" Like, Sega stopped making consoles a long time ago and such, and like, it's so shocking to him. He does an incantation to basically erase his memory because it's such a horrible thing for him, and he like writes it down in a book or such, and he's like, and so it's funny, like, because of the different things that 17 years ago, like he mentions like his love for like Sonic the Hedgehog and the Sega Saturn and such. And still, there's only 2 episodes out that so far, but it has been hilarious for me because I know the things that they're talking about, and I've gone through that, and then I have actually, yes, I think in the closet back there behind me, I have my original Sega Genesis.
Oh my god, you still have it? Oh, dude.
Yes.
My mom threw mine away. Like when I went away to college, like all my old game systems were like in the shed, and my mom cleaned out the shed and she threw away all my old stuff.
I'm so sorry.
So like my Nintendo, my Super Nintendo, my Sega Genesis, they're all gone, and all the games that went through it with it, she tossed them all out.
Yeah.
So I don't have them.
I still have my mother. Even she has an Atari. She has that. We still have the original Nintendo, the trackpad and such. I have a Sega Game Gear somewhere. So I still have all of that. The only disappointing thing is that I don't have my games for my Sega, and I'm really sad about that.
So
I still have my Sega.
Going back to this anime though,
yeah.
I read because I didn't watch it. I read the small synopsis on it, like kind of like got an idea of what it's about. But what I think is interesting, or not like depends how it goes, is that 17 years he's in a coma in another world. Do you get to see that, or does the anime only show you when he wakes up and then everything he deals with from then on, kind of thing?
So it's not like where it becomes like this reality type thing where he has to cope with it so much. It does go a little bit like that, where he's trying to get a cell phone and he wanted like a flip phone that like spun around. They're like, we don't use those anymore. We use touch screens and such. And so it's cool to like see like he's trying to figure it out, and his nephew is explaining to him like that transition from the 17 years ago to what it is today. Sorry, I lost track. What was your question?
No, like, do you get to watch the time he spent in the fantasy world, or do you only get to see the time he spends in the real world when he wakes up?
Yeah, so there are flashbacks. When he first meets his nephew, and he's talking in a different language and such, and he's like, "Oh no, we use Japanese," and he's trying to do incantations and magic and such, and they're not working. Gosh. And his nephew thinks he's crazy and such, and then he starts to basically put him off for like, like, this guy's out of his mind, not going to have anything to do with this guy. And then he speaks a spell in Japanese, and it does whatever it was. He starts making flames. He starts doing all these different things. He's like, oh, so Japanese works, but the other language doesn't. But he's actually the magic that he was able to obtain there, he can use in real life. And so one of those things is he shows some flashbacks of what happened in the other world.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, those also contain some funny parts too. As like there's in the image here you see an elf female who was his companion, or part way of his companion in the other world. But she would say something to him like, get away from me, you're ugly. The only person that would like want to spend time with you would be me, or whatever. And his nephew's like, the Sundre character wasn't like really created until like 2004, so he would have missed that.
Mm-hmm.
And so his uncle said like she was mean to him, so he dumped her off at a town and left her. So,
Oh my gosh. This sounds
so
amazing. Like, especially for my personal taste, like, I've really grown into loving the isekai genre. Like, I
mhm.
absolutely love that genre. So, like, this is definitely up my alley. I will definitely have to check this out sometime in the future. But anybody else that I guess is a fan of isekai kind of anime, you're probably gonna like this one too. So it sounds amazing. Thank you for bringing it to our attention because if you didn't say anything to me, I would have probably not heard of this one because I don't know much of like all the anime that ever was or will be. I kind of like just kind of get turned on to like whatever's featured on like Crunchyroll or something like that. But there's so many avenues nowadays other than Crunchyroll to watch anime. I mean, you have like I think we mentioned it before privately, like Hulu and Netflix, and you have
High Dive,
Crunchyroll, High Dive. Like, there's
Prime.
all these places to watch anime nowadays. So wherever you guys can find this anime, definitely check it out. Isekai Ojisan. It sounds amazing, and I looked it up. There's trailers online. Like if you go to YouTube, you can find like official trailers for it, so you can get an idea of what it's like. And I watched the trailer. I was actually debating on playing the trailer live for everybody, but I think there's going to be copyright issues if I do
Yeah,
that.
you
So
get in trouble for that.
I kind of decided to not live play it for you guys. So just definitely go to YouTube and just type in Isekai Oji-san. There's a bunch of different trailers out there you could watch. But very cool. I'm very interested in watching that show. But that's all the time that we have for today. I mean, we've talked a good while, but 2 hours and 20 minutes roughly. It's a pretty meaty episode that we had today. So before we go and let our wonderful guest that has devoted a lot of time to be on my show today, I do want to say a big thank you to you, Keith, for showing up and participating today's show and sharing your wealth of knowledge of 3D printing and anime and dolls, just all together. Thank you for coming on and being our first guest for the
Yeah.
show. I think this was a lot of fun. We need to do it again sometime and maybe
Yes.
talk about just other doll related things. Maybe we can have you back
Yeah.
as a guest again. But thank you for coming and
Well,
share
thank you for
and
having
teaching
me.
us about 3D printing. It was very cool. And turning me on to a new anime for sure.
Yeah, and the bad part is currently airing, so there's only 2 episodes out. But
Hmm. Yeah,
it's
it's something I will definitely keep my eye on for sure.
yeah.
It sounds really cool. And also there's a manga, right? There's a manga for it, so maybe
Probably it doesn't.
I think there's a manga.
Yeah, I think it's based off a manga. It
So
doesn't have a long name, so it's not a light novel.
if you're one of those individuals that prefer readings, light novels or reading manga more so than anime, I mean that's available to you. So one last thing before I let you go, Keith, I want to play a little game that I thought up that I thought would be really fun
Surprised.
for all my guests. So everyone that's going to be a guest on this show is going to play this little game, and I call it I don't even know what to call it really. Like the first name I thought of it was called like First Thoughts or What's on Your Mind kind of thing, and I just think it would be a really fun game to do. And I'm thinking that at the end of a season, which I haven't determined how long a season will be for Beyond the Doll, but I think the best guess with all the best answers or the funniest answers, we're going to do a poll for that. We'll actually get a gift. When we call it. So it's going to be a small little competition between all the guests, and unfortunately, you're going to be the first one to participate
me.
in this. So we're gonna play this guess. So here's the rules of the game. I'm gonna give you 5 words. Okay, just one word. I'm gonna give you 5 words, and you have to give me the very first thing that pops into your head when you think of this word. Okay, just the first thing. So like if I say apples, maybe you'll say oranges. It's just really quick, just like that. The first thought. I'm gonna tell you three of the terms are gonna be doll related, and 2 of the terms are going to be random. Okay, so, and I'm not gonna tell you in what order they're gonna be. So you're gonna you're gonna have to just be prepared. All right, so we're gonna get started, and just fire them off as quickly as you can. I was thinking about putting a timer, but I think it's just more fun if we just have you just fire it off like as soon as you come to think of something. Okay. So you ready?
Okay.
Okay. So here we go. I'm gonna start just about now. So smart doll,
Mirai.
makeup,
Maybelline. I don't know why. I don't know why.
a wig.
Cat.
Okay. Car.
Subaru.
Nice one. And lastly, we're gonna do what was that other one I was gonna say? Oh my god, I forgot already. Oh yeah. Face up.
I had makeup for some reason.
It's just fun and all fun in games. That was really interesting. So I'm gonna make a clip at the end of this season of everyone's 5 topics and 5 answers, and then I'm going to put a poll up where everyone can vote. So whoever gets the most votes will win a prize at the end. It's just a little prize. It's nothing crazy. It's just something I wanted all my guests to participate in and just have fun with. And we'll let the audience decide who ultimately will win the game. But thank you, Keith, for participating in today's episode. I know I said that before, but I can't stress it enough. It's just amazing to have a guest and throw ideas off of. I've been doing this show for 5 episodes now, and it's just me talking. And while that's fun, and I get to interact with chat by talking with chat, I think it's really awesome to just bounce off ideas off of a person live. And I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day, especially for us here on the East Coast. It's late at night, so taking your time out in the middle of the night to participate. Thank you, Keith.
But I haven't been to conventions for 2 years. Haven't really been out, so I was like, it's great to be able to talk to somebody about different things. I mean, yeah, and I work from home now too, so I'm not getting out that much.
Well, we're happy to have you here, and I'm sure everyone in chat and everyone watching at a later date is happy to have you here and learn a lot about 3D printing. So, unfortunately, this is the end of today's episode. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for showing your support for this channel and support for our new guests that came in for today to speak. And don't forget, next week is going to be another episode of the Doll Symposium, and then after that will be episode 7 of Beyond the Doll, which we are going to have another guest speaker on the next episode. Topic is going to be resin and vinyl. So we're going to discuss the differences, similarities between resin and vinyl. We have, like I said, we have a special guest talking about that because I know a lot of people in the community are interested in resin dolls and learning about them, or a lot of people in the community are resin collectors themselves and are interested to getting into the vinyl doll scene. So we are going to be covering those topics with a new guest in 2 weeks from now. So thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate all your support. Thank you for coming. Danny Chu has not tweeted out anything yet for the drop for Smart Doll Land, so we are in the clear. We're going to end it now, and probably he'll be tweeting out something shortly for you guys to purchase, so keep an eye out for your Twitter. So thanks, everybody, and one last thing before I go. Batman Jackson, here's Batgirl. Say bye. Bye, Keith. Bye, Chad.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.